It's the third day of April 2022. I'm Dana Durnford. I'm also known as the Nuclear Proctologist.org, and welcome to the Nuclear Super Scumbag Show. You are welcome to call in at 709-589-4406. 4406. This is Sunday show. And we got a big show for everybody tonight. Hope everybody's ready. We got a poll for everyone tonight. Big shot poll. Should people who claim nuclear power is carbon free get a $100,000 fine for each time they say it? Specifically, like journalists and public people. I think it's a good idea, but hey, what are you going to do with a couple of $1 trillion a year? We're not going to waste it on nuclear power, Dana, that's for sure. That's 10-4.
For the first time, potentially fatal levels of radiation have been discovered outside the crippled nuclear plant, raising concern.
So Fukushima, that was right away. That's 48 hours or something at Japan's nuclear meltdown. There was fatal levels off-site. You get your Atoms for Humanity, the A-10 Warthog only shoots dirty bombs. Is that reassuring? Disease factories is what nuclear actually is. Okay, so 2020, renewable energies was the equivalent of 300 nuclear power plants, 261 gigawatts. There's only 440 plants currently total on the planet. So those who argue we absolutely must construct more nuclear plants to beat the climate emergency are clearly wrong. And so the military-industrial complex warning from Eisenhower, former president of the United States, said in the Council of Government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. And we must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. And we should take nothing for granted, and only an alert, knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial military machines of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. And that one was a great idea, but that got buried under the
So, for example,
salt.
coming here, I would have got a dose of 0.07 millisieverts on the flight. And I actually went round Fukushima Dai-ichi on Wednesday, and the dose that I had going around the site, so very close to where the reactors are, it was 0.01, and probably lower, but that's the lowest it could actually read. So I got more of a dose flying here, and we'll get a dose tomorrow when I fly home, than I would have done from being in Fukushima.
She radiates children who have cancer on top of those lies. Can you imagine how many children she actually kills? It's Jerry Thomas. This is Arnie Gunnarsson. Now, Arnie refused to acknowledge the building looks like this. He's in line with that one right there.
Now, the division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima.
So he built the fuel racks for those pools. So he got to know it doesn't exist. 11 years of tricking everybody. What does it feel like, I wonder, to be like that? This is a model of the radioactive fallout. That's the Pacific Ocean over there. It's the Atlantic, Europe. That's America, Canada, Atlantic, Europe, the whole world. 16 days. This is a model, and it's backed up now by academic studies of the radiation. You're talking 220 million atoms per liter of rainfall in North America, Canada, United States. We launched research expeditions to see if there was any noticeable damage along the coastline. And the way you do that is species counts. So this is one of the boats I use for the last decade on research expeditions. And I will go 4 to 5 months at a time without coming home. And this is what some of it looks like, of course. Now all the people you see standing there, they're all me. I was just trying to articulate how you can fill the beach up with people, but you still can't find the species. So this is me up by Alaska. And the pictures to your right are recent pictures since Fukushima. And the pictures to your left are pre-Fukushima. As you can see, that's an extinction event. We repeated that year after year. Me being me and my trusty sidekick, Zoe. This is right by Alaska on a perfect day. This is right at the border of Canada and Alaska, way up north. And it's a spectacular day. That's a 19-foot tide exchange. Now, there's nothing on the rocks whatsoever, but the rocks should be many, many colors, right? When you come ashore, to your left is what it should look like, to the right is what it actually looks like. I repeated that year after year. The species actually didn't come back. This was due to Fukushima. Radioactive fallout. So when it rains on your continent, a lot of the water will run back down to the coastlines. And that's where these species are, right on your coastlines in what they call the nursery of the Pacific Ocean. These are authentic before and after pictures for the entire coastline. You would expect to see the pictures. There's so many species, you can't get them all in one picture. I'm just trying to introduce you to the research expeditions. And it typically looks like that, miserable. And like this at the end of the day, miserable. That's a typical day. This is a typical day, getting to site and heading back. And I've done this for 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year. It was a miserable, extremely miserable time in my life. I haven't given up on the misery. July the 31st, last of July, 2021. That was last year. Just a short video to get everybody back up to speed. So no spiders, no birds, no bees, no ants. The list goes on and on and on. This was last year too. So that's that island anyway. Up there, I forgot to clean all my windows today. I meant to do that this morning. There's a big rock pile underwater here. Yeah, there is. That's just to give you some context of who I am and what I do. I also run the nuclearproctologist.org. This is where we take a personal look at the nuclear industry, kind of like a proctologist would do. And I've been doing this for a very long time. The bags you're looking at are 1-ton bags in Japan. And there's a lot of them. Go around and mark on all of these bags, Dana is wrong. On each one of those bags, right, Dana is wrong, radiation good, Dana bad. All those bags. Go marking all those bags, all those tarp sections, that's all thousands of 1-ton bags and thousands and thousands of these 1-ton bags. Make sure you mark on every one of them, Dana's wrong, radiation is not harmful. Mark on the bags, no radiation got out of Fukushima. Mark on the bag that radiation has no adverse side effects. Why are you blind? Radioactive plants now grown out of the radioactive bags. So the cycle can't be stopped now, can it? And this is farmland. They just kept growing the food. They never actually stopped. They never started picking up bags till 2013. Canada had no inhibitions, no restrictions on the radioactive food. After the first 90 days, Canada lifted all restrictions. Oh, and forgot to tell the population. That was nice of them. So now we see this explosion of illnesses and diseases across Canada. Heart problems, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome. It's around 1,800 diseases. Oh, and cancers. These trucks are, each of those bags are 1 ton bags, so you got 10, 12,000 pounds per truck. The bags were only meant to last a year or two, by the way. Every time it rains, these bags are hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. It's really something what they got done. Nuclear is so carbon-free, makes me want to cry, look. So just that one accident, event is actually what you call it, mitigates any good nuclear could ever accomplish for thousands of years. If it ran good for thousands of years and it has one of these, it mitigates everything and destroys the ecosystem, the entire planet, in increments over a few decades. Not 3 or 4, but a couple, 1 or 2. So far, what we've seen on the research expeditions, the first one went bad and is bad. Yeah, like, go mark on all those bags, Dana is wrong. Go mark on these bags, the rice is good. Eat the rice, ignore Dana. Mark on them bags, radioactive pollen doesn't exist. They're actually insane. The industry's actually insane. We can't find anybody lucid in the entire nuclear industry. Would you eat food grown down in this part of the country? Because you are. That's why your children are sick all the time. The more you feed, the more they bioaccumulate, the sooner they die. They get sick and destroyed. New report describes failure at Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. Failure? Well, it was, yeah, but that's not what they described here. What they described here was the failure of the inspectors from the NRC. And there's lots of failures at the plant, too. NRC inspectors failed to identify several facility issues. That's being polite. Inspectors. Failed to identify the piping installations on the AFW system that had long been in degraded conditions, led to leaks of radioactive water. The investigation revealed that the NRC had not inspected the area where the leak occurred. Oh, that was because, deadly doses, can't go in there. Even though its inspection report indicated the inspectors had conducted a complete walk-down 3 months prior to the leak and shutdown, because it got worse and then finally became dangerous. Additionally, the report stated the number of hours the NRC staff spent directly inspecting both reactors for the complete walkdown in 2020 of April was fewer than recommended. In the applicable NRC inspection procedures. The finding released today by the NRC Inspector General are unsettling and unacceptable, that the safety and well-being of the entire San Luis community relies on federal inspectors doing what they're paid to do. The negligence detailed in this report will erode the public's trust in those who are tasked with keeping us safe. That's right, folks. A little accident, and you got to abandon your community and your loved ones, and then live with constant worry of radiation illnesses. It is critically important the NRC make a clear and convincing case to the Central Coast how it's going to hold the inspectors accountable for breaking protocol, and how it intends to restore confidence. We'll put them in jail. Take their licenses away. That's a start. Public should be public executed, but take their licenses away, put them in jail. Forever. March 16 jolt that derailed the bullet train in Japan was greater than 3/11, than the March 11th, 2011 multiple nuclear meltdown event. A couple of weeks ago, the one they said there was no damage. So this came out because of the train company. Think about it. I mean, originally they said the train was okay, nothing's off the track. And it's really hard to get that one wrong because 16 of the 17 cars were off the tracks. Over 1,000 spots of the tracks had to be repaired. The March 16th earthquake that struck off the coast of Fukushima Prefecture was stronger where the train derailed than the 2011 Great Japan earthquake. Sorry, getting a little carried away there. According to the East Japan Railway Company. Score, that's a big score, man. That's incredibly important. You just seen how the government... Now, this earthquake came ashore. We have multiple nuclear meltdowns, done $5.4 billion worth of damage, but never hurt the nuclear, broke the fragile nuclear power plants. The earthquake came right ashore there. Damaged 600 schools or something, 1,000 houses, but no damage to the fragile multiple nuclear reactors. So we assume there's a plume been hitting us now for over a week and a half. In the March the 16th quake, that registered a maximum intensity of upper 6. Japan uses a scale of 7, which meant it's around a 9.4, 9.6. Now see, that makes sense because the railway station said the shaking was worse than 2011 nuclear event, an earthquake, tsunami. TEPCO to launch the first probe of reactor core at Fukushima plant within 3 years. TEPCO. Not the people who made the reactor, not universities and academics and scientists and nuclear companies even. No, TEPCO. Gods of all gods now. It will be the first survey of a reactor core where heat is generated. Tokyo Electric Power Company, TEPCO, which was nationalized by the Japanese government right away because they went bankrupt, which means the Japanese government runs it, is seeking to decommission the plant whose number 1 to 3 reactors experienced meltdowns. So by always blaming TEPCO, you're not blaming a nuclear company that made the reactor, who should be there to fix it. If your car breaks, and say you buy a car, and you get your car and the car breaks on you, you bring it back to the company that made it. And because they're complicated, right? But imagine how complicated a nuclear power plant is. It would be the first survey of a reactor core. First survey of a reactor core. So that raises an interesting question. That's what remains of Reactor 4. This is the media claiming they're on top of the building in the fuel pool 100 feet above that. Why would they do something like that? The editors, the videographers, the soundmen, the makeup artists, the producers, the editors, the advertisers. Why would they pretend they're in a building that don't exist? You got any idea how many people got to pretend they're in a building that don't exist in order for ABC Cecilia Vega, who now sits at the White House as White House correspondent for ABC Australia, by the way. CNN Anna Corinne, who done extremely well after this. Rupert Winfield Hayes went on to do it to Reactor 3, 2, and CBS Seth Dorn, which is a senator's son, is also on PBS. Why did they all pretend they're in a building that don't exist? And how can you have a perfect building when the building actually doesn't even exist? Why would you do that? Because it's harmless? They're not doing this because they're bored. The whole world's media didn't do this for fun. Maybe they did, I suppose. They definitely hate us, that's for sure. TEPCO believes that the fuel debris, not the reactor core, but fuel debris. There's a big difference between fuel debris and reactor core. Exists inside the pressure vessel. Huh. There ain't no pressure vessel there. Reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4, there is no pressure vessels. They're going to talk about reactor 2. It's burned continuously for days and went China syndrome, which means it went deep into the earth at around 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. TEPCO believes the fuel debris exited inside the pressure vessel that covers the reactor. This is the cover story, by the way. This is just a cover story, right? The official story is what you're listening to here. 100% fable, but they're sticking to it. TEPCO's survey on the fuel debris progressed at the number 2 reactor. Survey. You can't go near the building, let alone go in the building. Workers aim to remove several grams of the debris from the bottom of the containment vessel. So the story is that the official story is that the reactor core fell down into the containment, hence the name of the word containment. But it didn't work like that. Right? It burnt continuously for several days. The heat signature, the entire building burnt continuously for several days. The reactor cores, right? The heat signature of the whole building was incredible. But the emissions were strong for several days. Then it went China syndrome. It went down and hit the water table, and steam expands. 1,400 foot per liter, and that cracked the earth. And then the steam coming out of the ground in 6 places was at around 10 sieverts per hour. Lethal doses all day, all night for many months, which meant everywhere that stuff landed is lethal doses. Unit 2 completely liquefied. 100% liquefaction of a uranium core. Never seen that before in the history of nuclear. I didn't plan for it. It went 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures is liquefied, and it just burns the hole down to the earth. And consumes everything, atomizes aerosols, ionizes and radiates, and releases it as continuous plumes that are ionized and radiated. It's very, very scary stuff. The worst case scenarios. See? Fukushima Unit 1 and 2 exhaust stacks, quite a ways away from the nuclear meltdowns, have lethal doses. You can't go near them. But you can go up to Unit 2 and Unit 1, can you? The perpetual lies of nuclear industry. Progress is slow as the number 1 reactor, which they put a Kevlar sarcophagus over that for 5 years straight. Then they had to dismantle it because it was so radioactive. So if you take a piece of that Kevlar 1 foot by 1 foot today to any subway station and leave it there, everybody that walks past it all day, every day for 1 million years will die that day. That's how radioactive that stuff is. Company spotted what it believed to be fuel debris in February. The company did. There's a fancy company doesn't exist. It's nationalized, right? Company, the nationalized ex-TEPCO company, spotted what it believed to be fuel debris in February. Whoopee friggin' do. Is that what you accomplished? Well, if you go into my playlist, you'll see 2 sets of pictures, of videos showing you nothing but pictures from official released from TEPCO. One set was 1,900 pictures, and another set was 750 something pictures that they released in 2021 in January. All of them were redacted, the reactors and the common spent fuel pool and reactor 6. Which raises the question, of course, why release them if everything's redacted from a drone? And why do that 10 years later on the 10th anniversary? Because they were trying to warn you. Smoke was pouring out of Unit 1 before the tsunami hit. No doubt that the quake crippled the reactors. And of course, the detonation from number 1 was an amazing detonation. And outside of number 1 was over 1 million sieverts per hour. That's real stuff we're talking about. That's lethal doses from a long, very far away, far, far away. You can't get back on the site, basically. The company has been forced to suspend its survey following an earthquake in mid-March, as well as malfunctions of a robot camera. So the time of that March, 2 weeks ago on the 16th, that they said was the Japanese seismic intensity scale of 6.6 or more out of 7. When you scale it up to a 10 scale, it's a 9.4, 9.6, which the evidence now, several weeks later, adds up to. Japan's government and TEPCO are maintaining their initial schedule of dismantling the plant by 2051. Unless they run out of homeless first. Tidewater area debating taking on forever nuclear waste project. This is a 2020 story. Because the story is still going on, I wanted to bring this back up. Over 5 million used nuclear fuel bundles. Just like an assembly. See? The Americans, or the boiling water reactors assemblies are typically around 1,800 pounds per bundle, per assembly. And so you can translate it over to Canadians, but I'm not sure off the top of my head because they don't articulate it there. Would be buried 500 meters under Bruce County farms. In prime farmland. If the community agrees to it. If the farming community agrees to it. So they bought, I think it was 1,000 acres of prime farmland there. But they weren't going to build a repository unless the community would let them. And so this is like consensual genocide is what they're looking for. In farmland. We wanted to contribute to dispelling the public's anxiety. This is a cracker story here. TEPCO is going to grow abalone and flatfish at the reactor site itself. In the water from the tanks, no less. Never stops around here, does it? We want to contribute to dispelling the public's anxiety and reassure people, says the crazies. An official of Tokyo Electric Power Company will raise seafood at a stricken Fukushima Dai-ichi nuclear power plant in a bid to ease concerns about his plan to release treated radioactive water stored there into the ocean. Now, if you go back into my playlist, you'll see videos specifically about the tanks. I got all almost that I can think about. All the points are covered in those presentations. Well, an official of Tokyo, what's his name? Or her name? Why not give us the name so we can have a good laugh? Will raise seafood. Gonna take her for walks too or what? In a bid to ease concerns about his plan to release treated, you see that word treated? You can't treat radioactive water that they're talking about. They're pouring water over melted reactor cores that are close to 800 tons. The water runs off it is their claim. Not that it actually exists anymore. The water that is running over the fuel left inside that didn't evaporate into atoms and kill the species worldwide, they're pouring water over it indiscriminately. Now they say it's 150 tons a day total. It's getting going in and pumped out. Some of it's filtered and sprayed back on the reactors. This is the definition of insanity times infinity, by the way. 150 tons is what your garden hose will pump out in about 24 hours. Now you got to split that up, that garden hose, into 4 buildings that are blew up and caught fire or melted down. The water in reality is about 2.2 sieverts, and a gallon of it is a lethal dose just walking past it for 100,000 years or more. In a bid to ease concern about his plan to release radioactive treated water stored into the ocean. Now, the ocean ran through the site. Ran through the reactor buildings, ran through the common spent fuel, ran through the dry storage cask buildings, ran through the incinerators that they have on these sites. They're allowed to burn radiation in the incinerator, but you can't destroy radiation by burning in the incinerator. You can release it into the environment, and all nuclear power plants do that to you. They love you so much. They respect you so much. The official Tokyo Electric Power Company will raise seafood at a stricken Dai-ichi nuclear power plant. I hope the fish they raise will be available for consuming only at TEPCO. It's incredibly stupid, another commenter said. I expect a glowing report in the near future, was another commenter. We'll make people eat it to prove it's safe, he says. The natural progression of this, of course, is that when no one volunteers to eat this garbage because they are concerned, they'll quietly sell it on the cheap. To school lunch companies, then dump the water anyway. And when other countries then ban Japanese seafood product, they'll cry and demand everyone go to the international courts, right? Which is what they've done, right, with South Korea, to prove the products are worth eating. By logic, it's very safe because statistically improved, most people on the planet will die without having eaten that fish. and that they raised her. So abalones, which are filter feeders, and will bioaccumulate radiation about 115,000 times more than a fish will, because they're filter feeders. Around 600 of them, apparently. Fish are to be farmed at the Fukushima Dai-ichi nuclear power station in an effort to demonstrate the safety of the water that has been treated for radioactivity. So if you take 2 sieverts, it's actually 2.2 sieverts, and you can check my presentations on the tanks. I provide a lot of documentation. I'm not going to go through tonight. 2 sieverts of better radiation. So what about gamma and alpha and neutron from a single liter of leaked water? So if you put, say, 5-gallon jerry can at McDonald's, everybody, if you fill it up every 20 minutes, everybody's dead. You can do that for hundreds of thousands of years. Just leave it there and fill it up every 20 minutes and exterminate everybody that's there. Now, if you put that into a filter, the filter becomes so radioactive you can't get near the building, let alone in it. You can never change the filter again. Let's say the filter was outdoors and all you had to do was come in with a forklift and pick it up, right, and move in with another forklift and stick another filter into place, and then drive over and put that in storage. You can't, because that'll kill everybody within a couple of hundred square feet. You're driving in to pick it up and you die. You have abandoned forklifts all over the place. You can't change the filter. Okay, so let's say you let it run for 5 hours at 2 sieverts a liter. Not 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, but 5 hours. Now if you put clean water through the filter, the water coming out the other end is lethal doses by the gallon. Because that's how radiation works. Fish are to be farmed in the Fukushima Dai-ichi nuclear power station. So it's a con job, right? TEPCO, the crazies, the government of Japan, the bootlickers of the station, has suffered the worst nuclear meltdown since Chernobyl. It's worse than Chernobyl. That's a pretty polite way to say nothing. Farming trials using seawater began last month. Really. I'm on the news cycle 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, after week, month after month, year after year. And you think I didn't catch that story if it was true? Come on. Video of the fish farming tanks is my favorite. And ongoing experiments will be streamed online. This is going to be fun. And some of the fish will be farmed in seawater and some in treated water from the tanks, with tests carried out to identify any differences in radiation. Let's ask Helen Caldercott what she thinks of it. Now, Helen Caldercott is going to try to convince you that Reactor 4 looks like the one to the left, not the one to the right. The original footage is Helen Caldercott in the middle at the top of the screen.
Let me ask you this. You've said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4 collapses, that you would evacuate your family from Boston. Do you think we would ever know the truth of what's going on there? And the reason I ask is because we've seen coverage in the national news media here in the United States from ABC News and others that take video cameras in, saying that they're being given exclusive access to number 4 in the removal of the fuel rods, which is said to have begun. And what we see in the video being shared here in America is a pristine interior building. It doesn't look like a building in which the top blew off in a hydrogen explosion.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of Building 4, and it does look pristine.
Oh, so you just heard Helen Caldercott tell you that it looks like that over there, not like this here. She's huge, man. She's huge. And she's got over 14 anti-nuclear books on top of that. TVA wants comments on OR nuclear reactor proposal by tomorrow. Well, thanks for the warning. 1 day, 2 day warning. Public comments on the Tennessee Valley Authority's proposal to install nuclear reactors at the Clinch River reactor site in Oak Ridge are due tomorrow, Monday. TVA has proposed a technology park, which will contain one or more advanced nuclear reactors with a cumulative electrical output not to exceed 800 megawatts. And the project is intended to demonstrate the feasibility of a small modular reactor. The feasibility. The reactor, if it goes ahead, would reportedly be the first of its kind built in the United States and in the world. I don't think they're qualified to build anything, so it won't get built in the first place. For filling in the gaps of when power generated by the sun and wind are not available. Ooh. That's a nasty kick to the renewable energy. No need to be so mean about it. You can use, and they won't of course, but ooh, they could use some good technology if you wanted to. We have some really nice technology coming up later where they're using pump storage under the ocean for windmills that are on the ocean. That story's coming up later. Okay, so you got pumped hydro, can deliver 100% electricity. And so this is the only problem is this is really complicated. You got to pump water up a hill with extra energy you got. And when the wind's not blowing or the sun's not shining, the water comes down the hill. So it doesn't look good. Or, even worse, compressed air wind storage. So you take excess energy from wind or solar power and you pump it into caverns underground at very low pressure, 120 psi. So you got to figure out how to build pumps. So good luck on that. That's not going to happen. They're trying though. HydroStore planned a 400 megawatt hour compressed air storage. Compressed air storage. It's a 50-year system life, uses no toxic materials, emission-free, and can provide operational inertia in support of grid stability. In other words, bye-bye gas, oil, coal, and nuclear. 400 megawatts electricity for 8 hours, which is your peak power. And it's comparable in size, physical size, to some of California's largest fossil fuel power plants. TVA has stated it considered but eliminated 2 other choices. Building small modular reactors at other sites or construction of alternative energy sources instead of nuclear ones. So you can have pumped hydro for storage and compressed air storage backed up by geothermal and tidal, and then back that up with You got wind and solar, geothermal and tidal and pumped hydro and compressed air. If you use all 6 of them, then you can handle the biggest cities on the planet right away. Within 2 years, you're up and running. Turn off your gas, coal, oil, and nuclear plants right away. 3 years later, 4 years later. That's pretty darn good, you ask me. Problem is, nobody's asking. Well, they know it exists, they refuse to acknowledge it, right? Oh, there's no wind, no solar, what are you going to do? Come up with solutions, stupid. Yeah, but it takes too long to make batteries. Why would you make batteries for when you got all kinds of other renewable, simple, stupid technology? Small gangster from Canada. A small modular reactor could be key weapon in climate change. No, it can't. How can it be key in climate change? You're talking about something that doesn't put out much power. He's a friggin' terrible, disgusting creature from a university here in Canada, that's where they hang out to, right? Radioactive waste at least decays, he says. Other waste doesn't, like chemicals. Just what? Radioactive waste, he says, at least that decays. But chemical waste doesn't. Actually, that's backwards. Chemical waste can be diluted down to harmless, or at least that's safe. You can't do that with nuclear for at least 15 million years or something. First off, for climate change, huge container ships are the biggest problem is emissions. One container ship is equal to 50 million cars. Just one. 15 of them, Esam Hussein, the Dean of Engineering and Applied Science at the University of Regina, and a member of the Canadian Nuclear Society. So he shouldn't be allowed to be a professor at a university. He's part of a death cult, for goodness sakes. So 15 of those ships, 15 of the biggest ships, create more pollution than all 760 million cars worldwide. 15 of them. There, Hussein. Quit smoking, man. It's bad for you. 7,000 chemicals. The country is facing a huge challenge when it comes to climate change. One of the biggest challenges is we got scumbags like you that are just using it to prop up the disease factory known as nuclear. Now, small modular reactors are going to be running on mixed oxide fuel. And that's just producing it is crimes against humanity. Country's facing a huge challenge. Yeah, we got to get rid of people like you. He should lose his degree for what he's doing here. He said renewable energy is generally unavailable 30% of the time. I just showed how compressed air, pumped hydro, geothermal, tidal energy, wind and solar can power any city, any community. I won't do it to you again. Nuclear power is available over 90% of the time, which could assist in the development of renewable energy. Now, we've heard that argument a lot since 2015, since the Paris Accord, because that's their talking points, right? Small modular reactors they don't exist. You got to build it, you got to get all the kinks out of it, you got to build a new one without those deficiencies in it and with all the upgrades and the engineering and blah, 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 blah. First off, you want to use mixed oxide fuels, you got to take existing fuel, boil it in acid at 3,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures to reclaim the uranium and the plutonium. That process in La Hague in France and Sellafield in the United Kingdom has contaminated the entire Atlantic Ocean and the Arctic Ocean. And many countries, of course. It's an abomination. The nuclear industry, the people for it, are always goblins. As soon as you find out these lies, you got to ask yourself, how sick really are these people? What are they willing to do in their personal lives that is actually evil too? And the answer is frightening. It's frightening. Economic opportunity. Really small modular reactors can provide an economic opportunity. Really. If I wrap shit on a stick, that's an economic opportunity, by the way. And you can sell it for fertilizer, right? Knock on enough doors, you'll sell it. Economic opportunity. But any kind of power source is an economic opportunity. If you build compressed air storage and pumped hydro storage and geothermal, they're all economic opportunities, aren't they? Or is it just nuclear? Because that's what you're claiming. It's not safe. There is no such thing as a safe. Just to get your fuel, you got to release absurd amount of radiation into the environment. Which, by the way, is illegal, right? Mixed oxide fuel is actually illegal in Canada and United States. Liberal energy critics, because that's the only way you're going to get that oomph from the small modular reactors is if you use a very high grade. But the problem with the mixed oxide fuel is what's left over on top of that is another major disaster, because nuclear toxic wise, according to the government, it's 1 billion radiation isotopes are 1 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. And now when you take the radiation and put it through a chain reaction again as a reclaimed uranium, mixed oxide uranium fuel, it's 1 billion times more toxic, 1 billion times 1 billion more toxic now. It's lethal to everything in replicating cells. Nothing has an autoimmune defense against it. So it's very effective at sterilizing the insects and the bacteria and everything else to stop reproduction entirely on the planet. Liberal energy critic Rene Legacy says he's still very concerned about the timing. Every step in small modular reactor development process is taking longer than anticipated. For example, the development plan was supposed to be released in the fall of 2020. So we're on a clock. And we'll need 500 megawatts carbon emission-free power to replace the Belledune coal plant. New Brunswick, Canada, power management seems to be stuck on promoting nuclear. They do, right? It's easy money. You get a lot of it. You get to steal a lot of it. A lot of high-paying jobs so you can poison the local population. Those people will kill anybody that tries to tell the truth. The Green leader disputed Holland's assertions that small modular reactors are proven safe and reliable. Well, they don't exist, so they can't be proven safe or reliable. They don't even exist, not even on paper. They said they have no idea, he said. The ones they looked at in Canada remain as a design concept. They have no track record. The Green leader disputed Holland's assertion it can be proven safe. They have no idea. Recycle a lot of old waste. You can't recycle old waste. It's illegal in Canada, for starters, for all the right reasons. Because of the emissions, because of what it turns into immediately when you stick it in the reactor, and because of the dangers. When this goes off, if you do have a meltdown, it's 200,000 times hotter than a normal brutal nuclear meltdown. They'll still be producing extremely hazardous waste. They'll have to be isolated from nature and people way past the human experience. It's a small volume. It is manageable, says scum degenerate Hussein. That person needs to go, right? Really. Go to work at Fukushima, scumbag. Like he really is a scumbag. And he's the Dean of Engineering at the University of Regina. He's the Dean. And out there telling lies. So what's his students going to do? His students will be happy to murder anybody in Canada too, I guess. Creating a whole bunch of monsters. How many academics have we seen do that to us? All of them. The truth is that whatever source of power we're going to use, there will be waste. Radioactive waste at least decays, Hussein claims. Other waste and chemical waste doesn't. This is such a bald-faced lie. It's we should put a complaint in to see if we can get his degree removed. This is an incredible demonic demon, as something say. The claim that radioactive waste decays and chemicals don't. I can't get over that somebody would actually say that. All my years doing this, I've never heard. I never heard nothing like it. I've never heard that before. Tens and tens of thousands of academic study. I've never heard anybody say that before. And he's the dean of a university. Can you imagine how actually evil you got to be that person there? Well, it's not going to decay for at least 15 million years. Then it's going to decay into another isotope. So it'll be 150 million years before that disappears. And at 220 million atoms per liter, that destroys the thyroid glands of all the species. Because it's radioactive hormones, right? Yeah, it's not a huge emitter, but it's big enough to destroy your DNA and your chromosome for 15 million years. Not only that, because there's so much of it, all the species, their thyroid glands were saturated with iodine 129, which means it was converted into radioactive hormones. Which is way, way, way scary. What a scumbag Hussein is. What a disgusting scumbag. And the investments, the taxpayer money is already paid off in the form of university research funding. University research funding. You know, people like Hussein, right? Yeah? That should horrify everybody on the freaking planet. Everybody on this planet should be humiliated. Literally should be humiliated that that man exists. It's humiliating. Hydro and renewables would be less expensive, suggesting the provincial government is enamored with the dream of New Brunswick becoming a manufacturer of small modular reactors. Now, this subject comes and goes. It only sticks around for a couple of weeks, then it's gone for a few months again. So this cycle, they're looking for handouts from the government, obviously, for the universities, right? These are con artists. And they're very dangerous. Kuhn feels that would be bad for the province and the planet, and he's right in saying that. Cooperative effort secures plutonium removal. My God, this story is insane. A shipment of plutonium this is the wildest story imaginable. A shipment of plutonium accumulated from inspection samples, remember that for later, collected in support of International Atomic Energy Agency safeguard missions, it's just samples, have been removed from the IAEA's agency laboratory, which is also known as United Nations, in Austria, to the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. This is such a scary story. These are maniacs, right? This industry is nothing but maniacs and monsters. They really are. They're just, the whole industry is actually Looney Tunes as they get. But the problem is they're dangerous. Technical experts from ORNL and Savannah River National Laboratories, these are goblins, work with a team from the IAEA for several years. For several years. It took them several years at the IAEA to collect samples for shipment. Several years. For safe and secure transportation of the material, plutonium removed will be used in sealed sources for non-proliferation research and development efforts. So it can't be non-proliferation if you're going to be using it. The plutonium, which represents accumulated residue for about 15 years worth of samples. If it's residual, why did it take several years to put it together? You sick and sadistic, demented, just horrific, demonic demons. UN watchdog chief Rafael Grossi will go to Chernobyl. But first he went to Moscow. I get to Chernobyl some other time. You don't mind coming out claiming that that's the farthest thing from a human right there, look. That can never be a human. He will lead a mission to Chernobyl as soon as possible. Oh, to be Rafael Grossi. How do you get to be that evil? How does that actually work, I wonder? You got to be some special kind of evil to be that guy. Let's put that back up there again. Let me get the Geiger counter out of the way for everybody, in case you want to screen capture it. Because that's who he actually is right there, look. That's an actual demon. Covered hundreds and hundreds of stories of him. That's an actual demon. It's pretty hard to imagine evilier than that creature right there. Comes after Ukraine, so the Russian troops have left a radioactive waste facility with radiation sickness. They're now claiming one of the soldiers died from radiation sickness. They ran away from the Chernobyl power plant, screaming, "Mommy, Mommy." Chernobyl nuclear 4 reactor exploded on April the 26th, coming right at us, 23 days away for the anniversary. The world's worst nuclear accident. Come on. Actually,
the fact that the reactor in Japan is 100 times more powerful than the one in Chernobyl, and in fact the two stations, the two power plants in the Fukushima region produce the world's biggest joint amount of energy, and this means of course that this reactor, which is under threat now, is far more powerful than the one in the 4th block of the Chernobyl nuclear power station, which exploded 25 years ago. the fact that the reactor in Japan is 100 times more powerful than the one in Chernobyl.
It's 100 times more powerful, each of those reactors. But all the world's media, right, as a sign of submission to the nuclear industry, calls Chernobyl the world's worst nuclear accident. Chernobyl somehow is the world's worst nuclear accident. UK World Nuclear News helps perpetrate that concept. UK developing robots to assist with decommissioning. Well, that's a relief. It's been like 70 years now, and you're going to get one together finally, or what? Donneray, which actually might never be clean, they'll say 300 years or something like that. Donneray restoration and the Robotics and Artificial Intelligence in Nuclear RAIN hub. RAIN. So whenever you see these acronyms, you know you're 100% with scumbags. First off, you got all kinds of robotic companies out there. Why don't you use their robots? All kinds of humanoid robots everywhere. No, we're not going to use them. We're going to get something real stupid instead. Are collaborating to develop a robot capable. So why ain't Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Oxford, MIT, blah, 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 universities already have one or two or three? Because they're not capable of doing things, right, that are good. They're schools of mass destruction, not schools of common sense. Are collaborating to develop a robot capable of assessing areas that are inaccessible or unsafe for humans to work in. At what point are you going to call him a lawyer? Because this is the same narrative for how many decades? The announcement came as the first networks of robotics and artificial intelligence collaboration hubs across the UK was launched. But it lost control in many places at Sellafield and Donneray. They expect at least 300 years anyway. The truth is they will never clean up Donneray or Sellafield. That's the truth. In February, the robot returned to Donneray to carry out a survey of a 140-meter-long underfloor duct, which runs under the central corridor between laboratories. It's all incredibly radioactive. And they had put a winch on it so they could get it back if it breaks. Because that's why wouldn't you want to get back something that's highly radioactive? Will help us make informed decisions on how the duct should be decommissioned. Well, you can't use the robot twice, now it's radioactive, right? We added fail-safe devices. Fail-safe devices, like a winch, to enable us to physically retrieve the robot. A winch line. A new facility in Whitehaven, and that's in Cumbria. And Cumbria is right alongside of the fuel processing site and ongoing mixed oxide fuel meltdown known as Windscale. Oh, well, they changed the name from Windscale to Sellafield after the meltdown. Not specifically because of the meltdown, but because of what they'd done. So they didn't go to universities or nuclear power plants looking for volunteers when Windscale melted down. No, that makes too much sense. They went to the local theaters and kidnapped the people from the back rows of the theaters. And in the 50s, the poor people sat in the back rows, right? A new facility in Cumbria. Now, Cumbria has cancer clusters. This is the ghouls' laughter, not laughter. Cancer clusters throughout Cumbria. And the ones in the children are trying to blame it on the flu. The kids all got leukemia because of flu. Not because of a nuclear meltdown a few miles away. No. So one of the robots opens its doors to stakeholders this week. They're mad. Is there any way to describe these people? They're actually lunatics, right? These are basically lunatics. Will ultimately be used by Sellafield. Have you seen Sellafield? Killer hot particles. Sellafield's coast is like Chernobyl and Fukushima. To develop the technologies needed to decommission nearby Sellafield and other sites like it. That's what that's all about. First off, they got open pools that nobody's checked for about 40 years. Outdoors, fuel pools. They don't even know what's in it. Outside that, it's lethal. It's a joint initiative developed by the incredible degenerate monsters at Sellafield, which is surrounded by farms, and the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. It has never decommissioned anything, and are actual monsters from the nuclear industry. In collaboration with the UK Demented Atomic Energy Authority, Manchester Scumbag University, and the Degenerate National Nuclear Laboratory. That's like a who's who of monsters in the United Kingdom right there. You get a job there if you're an actual monster. If you're heartless and soulless, you murder your own children for the industry, you can get a job with them. If not, no job for you for them. These are outdoors fuel pools. The story is absurd. This is absurdness. Offering the ability to test technology environments that mirror those on the Sellafield site. What do you think happens every time you have a heavy rainstorm down there? I know the cancer's not caused by there, it's caused by the flu, Dana. We're scientists, Dana. We only want the best for the little bastards, the little cancer bastards, as the nuclear industry likes to call children. Offering the ability to test technology in environments that mirror those at Sellafield site, because you don't want to go there, such as glove boxes. A glove box, you ever see them with their arms in these big long sleeves and the manipulators and everything else? That's a glove. That's what they call a glove box. Won't disarm you at all, will it? And water tanks. Water tanks! That's what the water tank is. It's an outdoor fuel pool full of reactor cores, and you don't even know what's in it. Obviously, this is taken with a drone. Nobody's went near it in about 40 to 50 years. It's hard to imagine they're that evil. That's normal. That's actually normal in the nuclear industry. That's normal, everyday evil in the nuclear industry. United Kingdom Atomic Energy Agency and the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority need remotely operated tools that are efficient and reliable and cost-effective and reusable. Can't reuse shit when you're with nuclear. Plutonium from Sellafield in the children's teeth, all of them. The industry of course, is written by the World Nuclear News. This is a nuclear lobbying group. Never put their names on a story. That's rule number 1 with that lot. Never put your name on the story. Durnford is watching. Why did Cameco stocks rally today? That's a really good question, actually. Since last year, since Sprout sprung up, investments in Canada, Toronto, with all kinds of magic money, and went out and now was allowed to buy all the physical uranium stocks. That's kind of, because no one's allowed to buy that. You got to be an insider to get that stuff. And that artificially inflated the prices because that's how they done it. And they kept the momentum going now for almost a whole year. It's a whole new kind of evil when it comes to nuclear. There's really nobody out there that comes close to them in evilness. Even the destructive military still doesn't come close to the nuclear industry and actual carnage and deaths and diseases and illnesses. It doesn't come close to the radioactive fallout legacy of 440 nuclear power plants, 1,000 fuel pools, all the dumping in the ocean. It's been predicted.
He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Through radioactive fallout. Cameco surges after BMO Capital upgrade shares to outperform from market with a 42 Canadian dollar price tag from $33. They don't bother telling the investors that in the first year after the meltdowns there was 865,000 extra cancers because of their beloved yellow cake. In a sector with a limited number of listed producers, Cameco stocks traded on sediment. No, this was about keeping the Ponzi scam going for another little while, more than most, because your yellow cake, introducing the radiation injuries, another epidemic. So the yellow cake you buy helps kill all these victims. Radiation-induced injury to the visual pathway from radiation therapy. Radiation therapy, radiation injuries to the heart, radiation injuries to the bowel, radiation-induced kidney injuries, breast radiation injury litigations, central nervous system radiation injury to the head and the neck, radiation-induced brain injury, radiation-induced lung injuries, radiation-induced brain necrosis, radiation-induced normal tissue injury, radiation-induced rectal injury, radiation-induced bowel injuries. We think Cameco's advantages, geographical production base, and its positions as the largest, most free-traded uranium disease stock means there should be further upside to its stock price. Radiation injury to the central nervous system. Earlier this week, the government of 4 Canadian provinces unveiled a blueprint to build several small-scale nuclear reactors. That wasn't a blueprint. Blurp, blurp in the media. We covered it on Thursday's show. Acute injury of the salivary glands during radiation therapy. Radiation-induced liver diseases. Radiation-induced bile duct injuries. A study on acute brain radiation injuries. And UK Prime Minister recently promised nuclear energy would return to 25%. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson did. Really. not the nuclear industry through Boris Johnson, but Boris Johnson. Radiation-induced brain injury. Recurrent brain tumors from radiation injuries. You know me. Cameco has become an increasingly popular stock on Wall Street, with more than 90% of the analysts covering the company rating the stocks a buy. And shares have surged 43% since Russia launched its invasion. Radiation therapy will keep you in business. Yeah, stocks will still grow. They still got to kill all of us with radiation yet. Injury to the brain from radiation therapy with whole brain. It's frightening they would actually do that to another human. They know what the outcome is. It never cures, it only kills. They take pride, too, in killing you the easiest, quickest, most efficient way. No, that's not true. It takes you about 3 to 4 months by radiation to kill you. They don't want it to stand out too much. More than 90% of analysts covering the company rated the stock a buy. Cognitive impairment in children treated with radiation genocide therapy for a brain tumor. Oh, your son has a brain tumor, your daughter has a brain tumor, nothing we can do. Well, come on, doc, there's got to be something you can do. No, nothing we can do. Please, doc, he's my only child. Well, if you sign this piece of paper saying you can't hold the chemotherapy industry accountable when your child dies, we can get him some good old chemo. Don't worry, the taxpayers will pay for it. Up to $900,000 a dead child. That's the price tag of a child now. $900,000 worth of chemo. Only 3% survive. And 3% happens to be the same amount as misdiagnosis. That's just a coincidence, Dana. I bet you. Yeah, it sounds like a coincidence, don't it? North Korea preparing new nuclear tests to improve their arsenal. They're coming for us. Get in your bomb shelters where you can. French nuclear air-to-surface missiles tested. No one gives a shit. North Korea going to launch ICBM. Apocalypse made easy. Interesting thing about North Korea was they burnt down every town in North Korea with napalm. Every single town was burnt to the ground with a vicious weapon known as napalm. 65 years after the U.S. burned down every town, which was actually United Nations was running it. 65 years after United Nations had the U.S. burn down every town in North Korea, the U.S. military is now simultaneously bombing or rocketing 7 different non-nuclear countries. Well, you can't do it to a country that got nuclear, they'll use it. 8th Army Chemical Officer Donald Bode is quoted as saying, on an average good day, pilots in the Korean War dropped 70,000 gallons of napalm and 45,000 gallons from the U.S. Air Force, 10 to 20,000 gallons by the U.S. Navy, 4 to 5,000 gallons by the Marines, and the Marines nicknamed the burning jellied gasoline cooking oil because there's all the villages with women and children, right? Perhaps 2 million Koreans, there's 3 million, north and south, 10 million brutally wounded, were killed in the Korean War by the United Nations, all in the name of opposing the rule of force. And the rule of force now has been in place for 70 years, land, sea, and air embargoes. And careful, because North Korea is going to get you. 4 million casualties, at least it was actually 10 million. And it was 3 million civilians. After Truman fired General MacArthur in 1951, the former Supreme Commander testified to Congress that the war in Korea has already almost destroyed a nation of 20 million people. General MacArthur said, I had never seen such devastation. I have seen, I guess, as much blood and disaster as any living man. And it just curled my stomach the last time I was there. After I looked at the wreckage and the thousands of women and children, I vomited. But hey, the missile, what do you call them? Commodores. They don't have to go there and see the carnage. They just turn a key, push a button. And even worse, women. They used to, if you were pregnant, they wouldn't let you have the job because you might have pains of conscience. They don't look like they're having any pains of conscience to me. Air Force women inspire. Really? Really? A decade ago, female missionaries could not pull alert at a certain stage of pregnancy or while nursing. Now they can. More often than not, the women who took responsibility for the ICBM launch control capsules choose instead to leave the despicable Air Force. Female airmen, men. Female men? Female men. Leading the nuclear enterprise, that's the scariest words imaginable, say the small changes are helping retain, recruit female missileers, while young female leaders say the changes and the coming decade of nuclear are building excitement among the females. Whoever wrote this should be arrested, by the way. Now, women represent 22% of all genocide buttons. I want today's female missileers to know that this is an exciting leadership opportunity. What the frig is she talking about? To shape a weapon system that will be in service through 2075. So if you join today and you get accepted, you got a 55-year job ahead of you, is what they're saying. 55 years sitting in a bunker right next to a big nuclear bomb. Sounds like a hoot, don't it? UK doomsday plan with bunker to protect the continuity of government after a nuclear strike. Really? Can you, it's, because I cover this stuff all the time. The government in the United Kingdom are just, they're evil. They're stupid and evil on top of that. They're inbreeds of inbreeds on top of that. It defies any kind of rationale. To ensure the authority in the country survived following a devastating nuclear blast. To ensure the authority. They're good slaves. We don't want them to go away on us. Three uranium stocks to buy in April for nuclear growth. Uranium prices have surged. We talked about this a few minutes ago. It's artificially inflated. It's been doing it for 11 years, artificially inflating it. But they finally got a little backbone to it after a decade of just flatlined. And that was artificially inflated by Sprout Uranium Trust last year. And then they kept it going by tricking people into buying the stocks with their who don't understand the nuances, right? If you knew what I showed you tonight, you would never buy uranium stocks. First off, you wouldn't buy it because they're genocide stocks. And you can't call it zero carbon energy. That's why we got a poll tonight. Should people that say things are carbon free, zero carbon, net zero, whatever, should people who claim nuclear power is carbon free get a $100,000 fine? Well, yeah, that makes sense. 7% accidentally said no. That's because they get confused sometimes. It's okay, I forgive you. Uranium prices surge due to new interest in nuclear power as a solution to the need for zero carbon energy. This is absurdness, by the way. It didn't that, but they used that narrative to brainwash you again. See? This is what I mean. It should be a $100,000 fine every time anybody calls it carbon anything. One exciting development is the creation of small nuclear reactors, small modular reactors. Exciting development. Well, small modular reactors are going to be using mixed oxide fuel, not yellow cake. Not fresh yellow cake, right? And that's a genocide now. Mixed oxide fuel is 100 billion% a genocide machine. That could speed up nuclear growth. Not for stocks, it won't. It's not going to happen anyway because by 2026, there's going to be another 4,800 gigawatts of renewables online, actually working. That's equal to all current fossil and nuclear power plants worldwide combined. So the year after that is going to be exponentially more, and it grows each year, of course. And boost demand for uranium. Small modular reactors can't boost demand for uranium because they're using mixed oxide fuel to trick you into thinking that they got power when they actually didn't. It's a deception to use to produce the mixed oxide fuel, right? There's a couple we got invaded by a British company, Magnox last year, and another one, and that's what they're trying to do, see? So that narrative is going to show up a lot because the government basically paid for everything up to this point for those companies. One uranium stock that should benefit directly from the higher prices is Cameco. This is an $8 billion company. They're the board, basically. They assimilate all companies that are struggling. They just grab them and they consume and get the licenses and stuff like that. $8 billion. So that's an $8 billion reason to try to get rid of me right there, see? I'm a threat to a company like that. I'm a threat to the nuclear industry, period. The truth is a threat, and nobody's ever done a nuclear show 5 days a week in history that condemns the nuclear industry, shows its flaws, provides you with the documentation, and does an educational program and does research expeditions on top of that. It's never been done in history. We are, and might never be done, right? Again, Cameco looks promising, he says, as a long-term play on nuclear power, as long-term. My main concern is the business has not been very profitable recent years, despite higher uranium prices. Last year, the company reported a $100 million loss for 2021. It's the media props this stuff up. The media is just social engineering. There is no media. It's social engineering. And they're really good at it, been at it for many, many decades. They're completely controlled. It's opposition. I reckon Cameco has potential for long term, but I prefer to wait for a better buying opportunity. If you had bought 2 years ago, you would have tripled, quadrupled even your money, your evil money, and that's the incentive, see? And so they artificially inflated it starting last year with Sprout Investments out of Ontario. Instead of buying Kazatomprom shares, I consider buying in a scumbag yellow cake in the United Kingdom. This is uranium trading and investment business with long-term contracts to buy uranium from, you guessed it, Kazatomprom. Dirty bastards, eh? it's happening, which is a cliche from, what's his face, Elon Musk or something, a piece of shit. What a despicable liar he turned out to be. Radiation at Chernobyl quite normal. IAEA nuclear chief Rafael Grossi again. His job is to be evil, right? He's exceptionally good at it. He excels at it. He's probably the most evil of the evils we've seen in a while. He's the evil of evil. I see my last video got censored heavily, eh? Wow. Russia soldiers, means I've done it right. Russian soldiers began leaving the Chernobyl nuclear plant got significant doses. It'd be crazy to believe the media. Are you worried about the threat of nuclear war with Russia? No. Not anymore. Originally, we didn't know what the hell was going on. Now we see that was used, right, to displace the coronavirus. Notice the coronavirus disappeared from the banners of most websites worldwide since February 24th. Not before February 24th, but since February 24th. As soon as the war started, coronavirus little tabs at the top of all the social engineering media sites disappeared. And America turned down $15 billion bailout for the coronavirus industry at the same time, but okayed the Stinger missiles for Ukraine for the citizens. Every citizen should have their own Stinger missile, that's what I say. Norway tells citizens to dust off Cold War bunkers in case of radiation from Ukraine nuclear plant. Dust off the Cold War bunkers. Well, because Norway shipped shoulder-launched missiles down there right away, right? Remember that? That's a picture you don't see too often where they show the river right alongside the nuclear meltdown. It's pretty rare for them to show that picture. In the last 10 years, that's probably the second time I've ever seen that picture. They rarely show that one. Climate change activism has a cost, Wall Street Journal. What a disgusting creature the media turned out to be. It's just social engineering. There is no media. The flip side of environmentalists, the West's reliance on a ruthless autocrat to supply the energy it fails to produce for itself. For decades, the environmental lobby has, with no little sacrimony, owed up to its effort to keep energy in the ground. Installed gas pipelines, shut down coal-fired plants, blocked oil production, and organized hostility to nuclear power. Really? Really? Those same activists who dismissed the importance of energy security must now share ownership of the miseries resulting from energy insecurity and from a war stemming apart from the West's reliance on the ruthless autocrats to supply its energy. If you had used wind and solar and geothermal and tidal energy and pumped hydro and compressed air storage, you still won't even acknowledge that it exists. You disgusting piece of shit at Wall Street Journal. Nuclear submarines proposed for New Zealand's waters. A Liberal senator believes Hobart would be an ideal location for a nuclear submarine base and would place Tasmania on the defense map. Tasmania is supposed to be a non-nuclear country, right? But all you need is a politician that don't give a shit And guess what? That's what we got for politicians. Are we on the verge of World War III again? That shut up a lot over the last week, didn't it? That's just the media. The social engineering writes the story, gets these little medias to run the story, and they get a kickback, right? That's how media makes money. They run stories, the lobbyists write, and they put their name on them. They build an audience on cat videos and everything else, and then they sell to the lobbyists to run their stories, their social engineering. Now we are obsessed with nuclear options, and for good reasons. Over the last century, the Earth has almost been blown up numerous times. Now we have one more reason to believe it's a strong possibility, as the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, just ordered the Ukrainian president's head. I want his head. I'm surprised he's still alive, unless he's part of the scam. The pilots were told there would be no practice alert drills, and according to the political scientists, Scott D. Sagan fully believes that a nuclear war was starting before the planes could take off. The base commander, he's just talking about others throughout history, these false alarms. The pilot in, what year was that? I missed it. An officer in command center drove his car onto the runway because the nuclear plane was on its way, flashing his lights to stop the nuclear plane from taking off. And as it turns out, the intruder was merely a beer. I skipped it, did I? 1962. A faulty alarm system. And he set off the F-106A interceptors. Turned out to be a bear had climbed the fence. The whole NATO alliance pledged to exclude Russia from the economic system. 30 countries, 30 militaries. That's what NATO is, right? It's 30 militaries. If you look it up, that's what it actually says, 30 militaries. Not countries, but 30 militaries. The whole NATO alliance, aka 30 militaries, pledged to exclude Russia. This is really interesting, right? We've never seen nothing like this. And this works out really good if you're part of the globalists. This is perfect. Why would Russia couldn't care less about Ukraine? Look what he done to Syria. Look what he done to Afghanistan. Look what he done to Croatia. Look. The whole NATO alliance pledged to exclude Russia. So if Israel attacks somebody, should everybody exclude Israel? If America attacks, next one America attacks, should everybody exclude America worldwide? You know, every year there's 80 million refugees created, but this is the only time we've ever seen something like this. Why Nigel Farage is unlikely to get his referendum on the government's net zero plan. He's a very polarizing politician in the United Kingdom. He's launched a campaign for a referendum on the government's plan to achieve net zero by 2050. According to Farage, green subsidies are an excessive burden on energy users and benefit rich landowners and foreign conglomerates. And he may have been inspired by a Swiss referendum last year, which rejected measures designed to help achieve the Swiss government's net zero target. Well, why don't you ask him? It is true that solar and wind power needs alternative energy generation as backup to cover dull and windless days, pending availability of more electricity storage capacity. capacity. The United Kingdom actually has pumped hydro storage sites. And very effective. And one in a mountain, for goodness sakes, recirculates the water. But if the United Kingdom, if renewable energy, like wind and solar they're talking about, I mean, last year was 333 nuclear power plants where the renewables came online, mostly wind and solar, right? But if they used storage, pumped hydro or compressed air storage, that solves the problem. It's dirt cheap. You can set it up in about 12 months. It's obsolete technology. And the military-industrial complex can't benefit off it. Nuclear power has potential in hybrid nuclear renewable systems using intermittent input from standard reactors or modular units. So what they're saying is, well, there's no storage, so let's use nuclear. That's the scam. These are sick. These people have a sickness, eh? They actually have a disease. It's actually a disease. I don't know why they're so friggin' hateful all the time. Energy storage technology to support renewable is developing quickly. Energy storage technology is pumped hydro compressed air. And you can actually do pump storage underwater. Hopefully we'll get to that story tonight. For example, by way of factory-scale lithium-ion batteries. Why would you use batteries for when you can use pumped hydro and compressed air storage? Pumped hydro, you can recirculate water, and you can have heavy mineral water, so it's much more better. Wholly new methods of electricity storage promise increased efficiencies and cost savings. But again, they're not talking about pumped hydro or compressed air. They're talking about batteries. And of course, everybody knows batteries are not going to happen. And why would you when you have so many better, more sensible, with more longevity available? And why go there? How to store excess wind power underwater. Speaking of it, how to store excess wind power underwater. There's a company in the United Kingdom that's actually storing wind power underwater. With 17 new wind farm projects planned for Scotland, the UK offshore wind power capacity is set to more than double. But what happens when the wind is blowing? The turbines are cranking out electricity and there's no demand for it. In 2020, enough electricity to supply more than 1 million homes was wasted due to a lack of storage. And one firm won a 2022 Best of Innovation Award at CES Technology Show earlier this year, believes it has the solution. Dutch startup Ocean Grazer developed the Ocean Battery, which stores energy below the wind farm. Dutch startup below the wind farm. It's not going to work. When there is excess electricity, the system pumps water from an underground reservoir into a trout. Flexible bladders that sit on the seabeds. Think of them like a big bicycle inner tube. Holds water under pressure. And every 33 feet, there's an extra 14 psi of pressure. The water in the tubes is under pressure, so when it's released, the water flows quickly and is directed through turbines also on the seabed, generating electricity when needed. The Ocean Battery is effectively based on the same technology as hydro storage, where water is pumped back through a dam in a river, though we have transformed it into something you can deploy on the seabed here. Prototype design for deep water has already been tested in the Netherlands. And the firm is now preparing to test a second system modified for shallower water in a lake in the northern Netherlands. Should be operational next year. And many onshore wind farms already use batteries to store extra power. And the lifetimes of the batteries is not very long. 5,000 to 10,000 charging cycles for the lithium ion. And the ocean batteries can take up to 1 million. It can be built everywhere where wind farms are being built, and that's also pretty cost effective at the end of the day. And it can be used alongside of solar farms if there are a lake nearby. Different energy storage technologies are suitable for storing energy on different time scales. Some are better suited for fast, responsive energy. Others are suitable to long-term energy storage. Eliminates the use of critical material like cobalt, nickel, lithium, and they're expensive and in short supply. I don't know what the hell that is off the top of my head. Land-based battery. Oh yeah, that's a picture they had there. But so there was kelp cabbage, the green algae. Just the one species of starfish, and they don't look healthy. And mussels, most of them are open shells, empty shells. That means. And there's actually nothing else there. Wow. Land-based battery storage is more useful to power firms used to handle other problems, such as when power lines are near their limits. Last year, the United Kingdom government launched a competition to come up with an innovative energy storage solution. 93 million available in capital funding. And surprisingly, they got a kick at the can. But that's really cool. So that's another one now we got to add to the pile, right? That's another one we got to add to the pile. Dungeness B moves from enhanced routine regulatory attention after safety improvements. They're surrounded by farms, right? This nuclear site on top of that. There's evil, and then there's the nuclear industry. A second site, the Atomic Weapons Establishment, a Brookesfield site in Berkshire, also returned to routine regulatory attention. Both of them are surrounded by farms. The watchdog, I say that lightly, also says the concerns about safety management culture have now been addressed through an extensive and wide-ranging performance improvement program. How'd you ever get to that stage where you needed to do that? Counterpunch. Counterpunch is always scumbags. Climate collapse or nuclear winter, take your pick. Why, there's not a third option, like do something sensible instead of just evil and evil? One of the many lousy effects of the Russian-Ukraine war has been the climate. Really? You think in 30 days? Biden made the idiotic choice of sanctions over negotiations, which is true. And the price of oil skyrocketed. It's called inflation. Well, I've been talking about this now for a month. That could have been avoided, 100%. No, this was on purpose. A horrible war and climbing inflation. The price of gas soared due to Biden's sanctions. Canada, all countries done the same thing. They got rid of their COVID tab at the top of each page and switched over to Ukraine, Russia. And, of course, it has to attack the human population of the entire planet. Because that's how social engineering works, right? It's ridiculous, yeah. That's what our homegrown reactionaries say. They claim renewables jack up prices at the pumps. Renewables jacked up prices at the pumps. Renewables did. Don't rely on Biden to cure the infection or rush to the rescue of wind and solar. That's an understatement. And the president tried to palm off the pathetic lie that astronomical prices at the pump were Putin's fault, pivoted to desperately courting Venezuela for its oil. Just forget our sanctions that killed 40,000 of your citizens. Ignore the failed assassination attempts on your president. Never mind about your funds that our attack dog, the UK, snatched from you in an act of brazen larceny and skipped the ferocious propaganda war we waged against your country. It's the U.S. empire, Colin. We need your oil, Venezuela. Not surprisingly, right-wing morons in Congress have been thoroughly propagandized into a stubborn brainlessness objected to Washington courting Caracas, Venezuela, right? Biden needs oil, and there has to be lots of it, so it can be cheap. Next up, Iran. Another official enemy is expected to save the hapless Democrats' bacon, so Washington has negotiated like mad to reinstate the nuclear pact, which would enable it to drop sanctions without losing face and buy cheap Iranian oil. So the Americans are going to get their oils off Venezuela and Iran. Something we called a few weeks ago. Well, I guess good will come out of cuckoo bird U.S. economic policies, one less nuclear-armed state, but not the right one. Wouldn't it just have been simpler for Washington to swallow its pride, promise publicly what it says privately, namely that Ukraine will never join NATO, restate the obvious that Crimea is, as it was for centuries, Russia, and that Russia's Ukrainians of the Donbass have a right to life which can only be ensured by a measure of independence. Climate is getting worse, and it's doing so terribly fast. Yeah, that's because of the catalyst. The catalyst was Fukushima. So the Fukushima radioactive fallout, this model is 20 days. It actually covers the whole planet after about a month. It's a continuous plume. It never stopped coming out. So imagine if that was a snowstorm where the snow never melted. And it's never stopped snowing, but the snow never melts. Because that's what radiation does. It never goes away. There's always more of it, but none of it goes away. It doesn't disappear. And now we have the entire biosphere is now destroyed permanently because of this radiation fallout. It's still ongoing. They covered up the earthquake in 2016, obviously for one reason only, is because another plume like that came out. So the plumes are pulsing energy at the speed of light every second. At almost a speed of light, almost 186,000 miles a second. Pulsing energy in every direction. So think of a snowstorm where each snowflake would pulse energy at the speed of light every second. Except it's not a snowstorm, it's a heat storm. It's a planet heater. And it kills all the bases of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestration chain right away. And so the planet starts heating up in increments as the species start dying. So carbon footprint, that should be illegal to say that, by the way. Biden's lunacy moves us closer to the atomic Armageddon. With that reality front and center, it's hard to refocus and remember that the earth is burning and our corporations are the cause. No, the nuclear industry is the cause. That's why we got climate change. 70 years of endless nuclear fallout that never goes away and pulses energy every second. Gargar, G-A-R, or G, yeah. I can't pronounce it. We don't really go that much in the names, Shayla. Gargar is his handle, I think, on YouTube. Atomic hope inside the pro-nuclear movement. The pro-nuclear movement. That looks a lot like Michael Schellenberg, don't it? So there's a new movie coming called Atomic Hope inside the pro-nuclear movement. I can't find any information on who's producing it, but you know that's going to be a doozy. I think this month that should be out. Fukushima fallout of fear. Again, that's Geoff Brumfel. After the Fukushima nuclear disaster, Japan kept people safe from the physical effects of radiation. Remember all those pictures I showed at the beginning of the 1-ton bags? Like to say, Japan kept people safe from the physical effects of radiation, and he wrote a paper on it. That's humiliating that people like that are allowed to exist. But not from the psychological impacts. And that was written in 2013. What a horrible piece of excrement to do that, right? From the worst nuclear disaster in 25 years. Evacuations of areas around the reactors probably limited the public's exposure to relatively safe levels. What part about the radioactive plume is it you can't wrap your mind around, or Blum? This is France's model. In a 16-day model, the radiation covers the whole planet. Uncertainty. Isolation of fears from radioactivity's invisible threat are jeopardizing the mental health of 210,000 residents who fled the nuclear disaster. It was 480,000 for the record. Show you these fake maps. I showed you the real one just in. As temperatures rose, the slender fuel rods full of uranium pellets began to warp. The meltdown had begun. Early the next morning, a siren wailed across Nami, signaling an evacuation. They were told to move to another community 30 kilometers to the northwest. He received a text message from a friend who worked at the power company's office in Tokyo. Unit 1 had exploded, and the radioactivity was spreading across Fukushima. So Unit 1 covered Fukushima and radioactive fallout. Imagine what Reactor 3 and 4 done. The medical university in Fukushima City became a hub. They also set the standards, right? And the standards were external doses only, no internal doses. What a betrayal Fukushima University was. Doctors used Geiger counters to screen evacuees' thyroid glands. I thought, you can screen and get gamma anyway. But you got to check for neutrons and alphas and betas. And Geiger counter can't do it. In the wake of the accident, and it's not going to do a very good job on the thyroid either. In the wake of the accident, most of the prefecture's resources were devoted to helping those with established mental disorders. Established mental disorders. Fukushima Medical University should be charged with crimes against humanity for what they've done. First off, they set the standard for radiation exposure as external doses only. Your universities are literally the most evilest buildings in human history by far. Calling them schools of mass destruction still doesn't really do it justice. Fukushima Medical University, by May, the emergency response was mostly over, and the hospital had a new job to assess the public's radiation dose. The few attempts made so far, however, have generally showed minimal risk. The Health Survey's latest assessment suggests the dose for nearly all the evacuees was very low, around 25 millisieverts. Well, you don't measure in millisieverts or microsieverts or unisieverts. You measure in atomic decays per second, becquerels. And my Geiger counter, I didn't put it back, did I? Oops. Now it's back. Well below the 100 microsievert exposure has been linked to an increased risk of cancer in survivors of the atomic bomb dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And their doses were only calculated on external doses for 76 years. And so the few handful of survivors left 76 years later are still fighting because they were poisoned internally. But the government refused to acknowledge internal doses, because if you did, you couldn't rebuild Fukushima and Nagasaki back on nuclear bomb craters. How evil are you when you rebuild your city on a nuclear bomb crater? Really, how friggin' evil are you to do something like that? It's a whole different level of evil. The World Health Organization, which is United Nations, IAEA, United Nations, World Bank, United Nations, UNSCEAR, World United Nations, ERPA, United Nations. There's so many of these organizations make you sick, so they hide them. It's still United Nations, but they call it the World Health Organization, but that's United Nations. There's 195 militaries. They're not supposed to exist. It's one of the most evilest things that have ever happened to our planet was United Nations and NATO. But United Nations in particular, they've taken over the whole planet now. They're so evil it defies any kind of logic. So it received estimate doses in NAMI of 10 to 50 millisieverts. If you get a single atom in your body, it sequesters in your muscles, your organs, and your bones. Your body attacks it with white blood cells for the rest of your life, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 440 minutes a day. Eventually, after a decade or two, it'll build a tumor around it. But what that meant was your body never stopped producing these white blood cells to attack the radiation. You had to displace your red blood cells. And the more red blood cells displaced, the more susceptible your immune system is to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign to people, now become lethal. And so as you bioaccumulate radiation from eating food, because now it's shipped freely into your countries with no warning labels, and people have been disarmed in increments over a decade. They don't know they're supposed to check. The infants might have received a dose that could increase the risk of cancer in their still developing thyroids. Again, that's meant to deceive you. Because if you get a big dose in your thyroid, a lot of it is turned into radioactive hormones right away and distributed throughout your body as radioactive hormones. And once your thyroid is affected, it's permanent. And so how can infants get a big dose but not everybody else? Second off, there's 1,800 illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries besides cancer. Right, so the idea is make you only, and we cover it all the time, only think of cancer, don't think of the thousands of other diseases and illnesses. Radiation specialist is that it's difficult to predict the health effect from such low doses. Dale Preston says he thinks it's unlikely to see an increase in cancer risks. They'll be very, very small. Right? That's how the law works. It's very smooth. It's done everywhere. The same narrative. You see it showing up everywhere. If you did get a large study, I think the chance of observing a statistical significant radiation-associated risk would be pretty low. First off, the numbers throughout Fukushima Prefecture and Japan are stunning. Tokyo was seeing 29 million atomic decays per square meter throughout the whole 36 million people city. Worms, 60 miles away from the nuclear meltdowns, were excreting 1.4 million atomic decays per kilogram of excrement. And that's all worms do all day, is excrete. So it's not each worm, it's just worm excrement. Yabe said that the radiophobia remains a major problem among the Japanese refugees. Radiophobia. So these are incredible scumbags to do this, obviously. A poll published last year by the Pew Research Center in Washington, for example, found 76% of Japanese people believed that food from a nuclear wasteland, Fukushima, was not safe, despite the despicable government and scumbag scientific assurances to the contrary. I mean, my goodness, you live in a very evil society. It's so hard for the average person can't comprehend how incredibly evil, unbelievably evil their local government, federal government, and scientists and academics and universities and medias actually are. You really can't comprehend it, I don't think. Not the people that watch my show all the time. Obviously, they're exposed to this constantly. But it's stunning. I mean, that's stunning how evil your universities are. That's stunning on its own. Your social engineering, known as media, you can't get a job unless you're evil. I'm not exaggerating. I'm actually not really doing it justice how evil. I'm restricting my language on purpose. Your government is non-functional. You don't have a functional government, media, or university, period. It simply doesn't exist. It's 100% takeover, 100% control. Not 99.9, but 100%. We know, we cover it. It's an absurd amount of documentation. And many do not trust the government. If you trust the government, it's because you're a lunatic, or you're just simply disarmed. You're a very gullible person. The only way you can trust the government. They found very few cases of significant radiation exposures among the evacuees. Well, all of Canada, the United States, and half the planet in just 20 days was covered in radioactive fallout. Huge numbers. We're talking, 200 million atomic decays per liter of rainfall. The most absurd number in human history. And your academics are out there doing everything they can to cut your throat and your children's. The children carry dosimeters provided by the Health Survey to collect radiation data and calm the public's concern. The children can't read the dosimeters, by the way, they got to go to the universities. They're 100% guinea pigs. Use the children as guinea pigs. Rather than let them evacuate, kept them there. That's a whole different kind of evil. We've never encountered that before. That's evil on a genocide scale. Yuko wonders whether they will one day develop cancer. Well, you can get up to 1,800 illnesses too that'll kill you before cancer does. The health survey lacked the funding for a more ambitious program. The national government had given it $34 million for a year. And look at the people who took the money and ran the survey. Actual degenerate scumbags. 100% monsters. Unbelievable monsters. Activity concentrations of environmental samples collected in Fukushima Prefecture immediately after the Fukushima nuclear accident. 3 rows of names. You gotta pay their mortgage, and put your kids through private school and dental and healthcare and insurance and food and everything else, parties and stuff like this. So the study, they get paid all that money not to tell the truth. Look how many lawyers got together to do that study. I think it's stunning. Radionuclide concentrations in environmental samples like surface soil, plants, waters were evaluated. The contribution rate of short half-life, iodine 132. Exposures to the residents. If you're getting dosed with 132, you're getting dosed with uranium, plutonium, and the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods is curium. Curium, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you for plutonium. So they're only looking at iodine and cesium. These are gamma. Not looking at alpha, beta, or neutrons. So you got 3 rows of murderers. 100% deceptive and deceitful and dishonest and disingenuous. Lots of cooling functions led to hydrogen explosions in 3 reactors, 4. And the fuel pools, 2 fuel pools at the top of each building are gone. And artificial radionuclides like iodine and cesium were released. The radionuclides have been detected all around the world. That's an unusual statement. Of course, that's how they downplay it. So it wasn't just gamma, iodine and cesium. It's absurd to suggest it was just iodine and cesium. A first team of radiological professionals from Hiroshima University carried out the screening survey March the 15th to the 19th, 4 days, 2011, at evacuation centers and public facilities in Fukushima. Estimated doses of all of them was below 50 millisieverts. Ambient dose range from 0.414 to 9.7 unigrays. Why are you using unigrays in 2011 for? Highest ambient doses were 9.7 unigrays in Koriyama City, which has 140,000 atomic decays of just gamma per square meter right now. These are maniacs to claim there's no doses like that. And to use unigray was meant to confuse you and deceive the population. Because unigrays is basically, it's energy. Radioactive fallout is particles that you can breathe in that can land on you and stay there and pulse energy every second or stay in you or in your food or your water. It's so evil to do what you do. You can lose faith in humanity 100%. That's the problem with the truth. And then they have the incredible arrogance to talk about it's important to clarify the thyroid equivalent dose for children when they won't even acknowledge all the elements. They won't acknowledge the actual real numbers all around Fukushima. It's just heartbreaking. Former ABC News President James Goldston inks a deal with Capital Entertainments. There he is, the piece of shit himself. The first 3 projects already in the works under the pact include Meltdown about the Fukushima nuclear disaster. That's the picture of it coming. It's a gripping account of the Fukushima nuclear crisis 10 years ago. It's 11 years ago. It tells the story of 14 days that exposed the myth of absolute safety and revealed the lack of real leadership that threatened every major democracy in the world. It's the latest updated version of award-winning Chernobyl, where the modern-day elites of political and bureaucrats in one of the world's most advanced economics panicked and failed completely, and only the quiet heroism of the engineers and technicians saved the world from calamity. So you know that's going to be 100% cover-up. Once again, the environmentalists are sabotaging the climate progress. In 2019, when the city put its ambitious climate goals in law, the Hinkley Point nuclear power plant provided the bulk of its carbon-free electricity. Again, nuclear is not carbon-free. It's nowhere close to carbon-free. It's the most carbon-intensive thing in human history. The plant was profitable, met the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's safety standards. Nevertheless, environmental groups have been fighting to close it for decades because of its proximity to both New York and the Stamford Peekskill fault line created an unacceptable risk. Wind and solar are neither sufficiently abundant in New York nor sufficiently reliable. Whose fault is that? It's the nuclear industry. Don't want no competition. To replace the emission-free energy that Hinkley Point produced. Hinkley Point was never emission-free. Your brain is emission-free, and you're a coward for writing what you did. Wind and solar are excellent sources of power, but due to the limitation of batteries storage, they cannot be relied upon to yield electricity. Again, right? All day, every day, week after week, month after month, year after year, we hear that exact same narrative in every single story. Because pumped hydro and compressed air don't exist, and geothermal and tidal energy don't exist. Just batteries. Rigged. Controlled. It's just so blatant. Thus, Canadian hydropower is critical to New York. Well, I think it's more critical to Canadians to stop giving New York that shit. No offense. How nuclear kills fish. Hinkley Point. Here's your carbon-free nuclear. They found that the facilities kill more than 17 billion fish annually in New York at Hinkley Point, and another 9 billion dead fish in New Jersey each year. They found that the ones through cooling systems, National Marine Fishery Services, are vacuuming up trillions of newly hatched fish and destroying them in the heat exchangers. Another way they're killing fish is there's strong evidence the decline in fish stocks along the entire northeast Atlantic seaboard is due more to the destructions of the baby fish than the overfishing of adults by commercial fleets. The Hinkley plant sucks in 2.5 billion gallons of water each day. 2.5 billion gallons boil off into the environment. Each glass is a billion creatures. Around 2 billion juvenile mature fish are also killed in the screens and the thermal plumes each year. And the NRC estimated more than 300 billion baby fish are killed when they're sucked into the 40-foot wide intake pipes. That's 6 different ways a nuclear power plant exterminates the species. And they don't bother telling you there's 1 billion creatures in every glass of water of that 250 billion, 2.5 billion gallons a day. It's stunning, isn't it? Times 1 billion fish each glass. Well, not fish, but eggs and larvae and phytoplankton and small fry. Nuclear power are worth the risk. Suppose all vehicles on the road are powered exclusively by electricity. Just think, no more polluting exhaust from gasoline-powered engines. But they're not, and they won't be for a long time. And in another 4 years, renewables will have more renewables on the line in the next 4 years than all fossil and nuclear combined. You're going to have an equivalent of 5,500 nuclear power plants, 4,800 gigawatts of renewable energies online in the next 4 years. It's a little premature to come out and shit, even though they're sabotaging renewables constantly. Shows many square miles of solar panels required to equal the capacity of a single 1,200 megawatt coal-fired plant. So what? Anything is better than nuclear. Hundreds of acres of wind turbines blighting the landscape and killing the birds. Actually, that's not true. The studies have shown almost no birds die in collisions with the wind turbine blades. So what if you got to use hundreds of acres? Who cares? You can't. You know, you're going to dig up hundreds of acres to get to uranium, hundreds of acres to get to any other mineral. The solar power can only be generated during sunlight, again, with the fake narrative. Wind turbines are useless on a calm day. That's because you won't acknowledge that we have incredible, massive storage systems that are completely harmless to the ecosystem compared to conventional. There is, however, a viable solution. It's scumbag nuclear power. Scumbag nuclear power is clean. Whoever wrote that should have their fingers broken anyway. The industry has served us well with a few major disasters. 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, Fukushima. That's nothing. What about 20 years of just dumping it directly into the ocean? Fukushima covered the whole planet. Chernobyl changed the sex ratio of all the males and females in Europe, for starters. 3 Mile Island radiated over 2 million people. They admit that. They claim it was equal to watching color television for an extra year. That's called contempt, by the way. That's absurd contempt. And the people who've done that study are probably still alive today. Imagine telling you that inhaling anthropogenic man-made radioactive fallout is equal to watching color television. Imagine the contempt they actually got to say something like that. Imagine how evil you got to be to do that. Oh, that's right. We're talking about Arnie Gunnison and Lake Barrett. Clean, green nuclear power. These are Gail Wickstrom. You know, Gail, you piece of shit. You disgusting parasite. You disgusting maggot. You creep. You degenerate reject, you. Guest column, we need more sensible solutions on climate change. Spending trillions on supposed solutions is not the answer. Just talk about the 3 that are constantly in the news as a solution to climate change: the electric cars, solar, and wind. In these cases, the cure is worse than the disease. No, so like electric cars, is not here and won't be here for a long time. Solar and wind are perfect if you pair them up properly with storage, like compressed air storage, pumped hydro storage, or you back it up with 24-hour-a-day energies like geothermal or tidal zones energy. If every car was electric, well, it's not. Our current grid couldn't handle it. Yeah, but it's not. It's not going to be for who knows how long. Long after you're gone, probably. So shut up. In the event of a massive power failure due to a storm, how would people evacuate low-lying areas when their car batteries died? Well, we don't have that problem. They're not electric cars. It leaves them stranded on the road or unable to leave their homes. But they don't have electric cars everywhere. Second, solar is unreliable. Well, it is reliable if you backed it up with storage that nobody refuses to acknowledge exists, despite the fact that it exists and it's dirt cheap and easy and quickly implemented. Most of our solar panels are made in China. So what? Everything at Walmart is made in China. And the power used in production comes mostly from coal-fired generation. So does nuclear. Nuclear can't even exist without coal, gas, and oil plants supplying 24-hour power, and for another 100 years after it stops to decommission it. Certainly not good for the environment. You're not good for the environment. You should shut up and crawl back in whatever hole you just came out of. Solar and wind is unreliable, but it's not. There's over 333 nuclear power plants where the solar and wind came online last year. There are many solid cases against wind destroying fisheries and birds and disrupting sea creatures' migration. How does a windmill above the ocean disrupt migratory animals? I really need to know that one. How does that actually work? We just debunked the one that it kills birds, and it doesn't destroy the fisheries because it's not down banging at them. Nuclear destroys the fisheries. I showed you Hinkley Point a few minutes ago, you bloody creep. Transporting them to landfills or other places to dispose of them uses energy from fossil fuels. Really? You really think that's not applicable to everything out there? Oh, the newer reactors like Terra Power are clean and firm and safe and efficient. Oh, so you're one of those. Spent rods sitting in nuclear waste dumps. Nuclear is safe. We have nuclear subs and aircraft carriers operating safely all over the world. And how many of them does it take to poison an entire planet when they go wrong? Just one. How many of them have been scuttled and dumped into the ocean? Quite a few. Russia has 160 nuclear subs ran up on beaches in northern Russia, abandoned because you don't know how to decommission them, hemorrhaging into the environment. United Kingdom has 18 of them over in Scotland, tied up for 2 decades. They don't know how to decommission nuclear subs. You're a parasite, is your problem. The author lives in East Marion. You disgusting maggot. There are only 3 reactor accidents since the inception of nuclear power generation. Really? So you're saying Mayak never happened, Santa Susa never happened, Windscale never happened, SL1 never happened, Hanford never hemorrhaged into the environment, the national laboratories worldwide. Russia has 18,000 dumps in the Arctic, for God's sakes, of nuclear. Many countries have spent decades dumping it into the oceans, killing our food chain and our oxygen supplies. Jack Malley. I like to kick the shit out of you, Jack, but there's so many of you. I just haven't got time. How Canada's top court just bolstered a pandemic exclusion. BI exclusion. How Canada's top court. Well, you've seen what they've done to me. February 21st, 2006, a global health science company agreed to buy radioisotopes from Chalk River, the Atomic Energy of Canada Limited, which is now ran by Americans, owned by Americans, at a nuclear research university reactor located in Chalk River. Nuclear Research Universal. Chalk River is the site of the first meltdown, I think, on the planet. Still melting down. They want to bury it where it is. There would be sold worldwide for cancer treatments. So Chalk River is a genocide machine. Is it just every facet of nuclear is just evil, super evil, or incredibly evil? May the 14th, 2009, heavy water, this is a special radioactive water used in the pools, right? It doesn't just contain radioactive tritium. When I see that, that makes me so angry. First off, if there is radioactive tritium, it's called tritium-3H, not tritium. It was discovered leaking. Really? So you're saying that you got water that only contains tritium? Really? The Chalk River, multiple accident site over the decades, since the 50s, was discovered leaking through the wall of the NRU reactor, nuclear research reactor. The reactor was shut down for 15 months to repair the leak. If it takes you 15 months to repair the leak, it's not a leak. It's brutal. It was caused by corrosion. And of course, one of the world's biggest freshwater lakes is right there, a few hundred feet away, downhill. Where does the runoffs go to, I wonder? And then that goes into the bigger lakes that feed water to several million people in America and Canada. So MDS submitted a claim for lost profits on the basis that the claim was excluded from the policy because of corrosion. The appeal courts found in favor of the insurer didn't want to pay out because they were going to buy the isotope, but the reactor had to shut down for 16 months and then too bad, so sad, they lost their money. They went to the insurance said no, and they went to the courts said no. Atomic Energy Canada Limited to be produced at the Nuclear Research University reactor located in Chalk River, to be sold worldwide for cancer. There is no such thing as a cancer treatment. I went to that earlier with you. That treatment destroys all the other organs in your body. Hunters put down their tools at Hinkley Point C nuclear plant, which is surrounded by farms, by the way. Radioactive farm genocide machines. So hunters put down their tools, but there are around 7,000 people there. Hundreds of mass murderers at Hinkley Point C nuclear power plant have downed the tools over concerns about working arrangements. EDF is running the place, right? Because the United Kingdom too stupid to build their own reactor. Said Baylor was in discussions with workers about resolving the issues. The vast majority of the 7,500 staff are not taking part in the walkout. That's all they really give you, right? Hinkley Point A, nuclear waste, in 2019, transport plans were refused. Hinkley Point A, or C, is it? Yeah, no, A. That's Hinkley Point A. What's wrong with that picture? They're surrounded by farms. They're surrounded by farms. That's so evil. Almost all nuclear power plants do that, by the way. Hinkley Point A nuclear waste transport plan was refused. The Magnox, which runs the decommissioning site, they're set up here in Canada now, too, for small modular reactors, right? The degenerate scum. Applied for permission to bring waste from 3 UK nuclear power stations to the site by road. So they wanted to bring waste from other nuclear plants on the main road to another nuclear site. Unbelievable how evil this industry actually is. Somerset County Council voted unanimously to refuse the plans. Magnox says it was disappointed the council wasn't going to let them carry out the genocide. The genocide company had applied to change the rules so it could transport temporary store waste there in Oldbury and Gloucester, Dungeness A in Kent, and Sizewell A in Suffolk. You got any idea how evil these people actually are? Despite being recommended for approval, recommended by the scumbags, the Council's Regulation Committee voted unanimously to oppose the application. Approving the plan would send a message that more of the Hinkley A storage facilities could become home to waste from other parts of the United Kingdom. Which was the right move, wasn't it? A spokesperson for Magnox said it was considering what its next step would be. Magnox is disappointed the committee has not agreed with the planning officer's recommendations for approval. A tough friggin' look. It should be charged with trying to poison the communities. Hinkley Point C is being built near the old Hinkley Point A and B stations. Will have its own separate temporary waste storage facility. India is going to burn their nuclear waste from now on, apparently. Try wrapping your mind around that one. Well, Japan's doing it. That's what they're going to say. Hinkley Point Nuclear Waste C Disposal Plan. This was 2011. Hinkley Point Nuclear Waste C Disposal Plan. Nuclear waste is currently stored in vaults at Hinkley Point. Plans were being developed to deal with nuclear waste at Hinkley Point A in West Somerset. Will see radioactive gas and liquid released into the sea. The power station began decommissioning in 2001. It's working on a system putting intermediate waste in vats of acid to reduce it down. So they're going to pipe the gas, the radioactive isotopes. As you're talking about huge numbers. Magnox, the company that manages the site, said there'd be no risk to the public health, nudge, nudge, or the environment. Nuclear expert questioned the controls in place at Hinkley Point. Magnox said the process of dissolving material in acid would give off gas and produce liquids that are radioactive. However, releases would be very low and cause no harms. So in order to reduce the waste, they just stuck it in acid. How do you get that evil? How do you actually get that evil? How do you get that disconnected? Where's the nuclear regulatory agencies? Where's the nuclear decommissioning authorities? Where's the International Atomic Energy Agency? Oh, that's right, they all signed off on it. They don't care about you. They don't care about the planet. They don't care about the future either. They don't care about themselves. They're just zombies. Nuclear zombies. Destructive zombies. Process has been used elsewhere. Would not start until at least 2015, nuclear discharges. John Large, nuclear consultant, worked with power companies and Greenpeace. As if that's some kind of recommendation. If you look at the history and development of the British nuclear industry and look at the calamity was caused by radioactive discharges around Sellafield. There's still 8 million litres a day coming out of Sellafield. It used to be called Windscale. They had to change that after the crimes they committed. Chief Inspector at the Office for Nuclear Regulation. Chief Inspector. This is such a joke, isn't it? Our mission is to protect people and society from the nuclear industry. But it's up to Magnox to prove to us it's safe to carry out those activities. It basically tell you to F off. What a disgusting piece of work. MK Ultra, the CIA's secret pursuit of mind control. They funded an army of psychiatrists, institutions across the United States and Canada, to perform experiments on patients using psychedelic drugs, sensory deprivations, electroshock treatment, and wicked, evil, unbelievably evil medical practices. The whole system is just corrupt. The whole system is disease. One big disease. They have children by inbreeding. You can imagine what they turn up like. They're currently in charge, by the way. The inbreeds of the inbreeds of the inbreeds. They're completely out of control at this stage. We're the only generation that will have an opportunity to fight back for the planet. That ends after in a few years. There'll be no more. It's gone. They're gone totally mad on us. They hate us. They hate the species, and they hate you in particular and your children. They hate you. They despise you. They don't even like themselves, right? Small modular reactor is not the answer to our urgent climate. The urgent climate is caused by nuclear. Climate change is nuclear. Nuclear fallout. There's so much of it now, it has changed the planet. Wind and solar are manifestly proven. Small modular reactors are a boutique technology that have yet to be proven their viabilities anywhere. The recent enthusiasm noted in Canada for small modular reactors might be sound and fury signifying close to nothing. Small modular reactors are a fledgling new generation of compact reactors. They're concept or paper reactors yet to prove their viability anywhere. They could power public buildings, industrial facilities, municipality, utilities, and small towns, including indigenous communities. Why say indigenous communities? Because most of the nuclear legacy has been about polluting the indigenous communities and properties. Ottawa invested $27 million in small modular reactor development, mostly with Magnox from the United Kingdom, right? But $27 million is nothing to the nuclear industry. It's literally nothing. It's the equivalent of nothing. This week, 4 provinces, Ontario, New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, committed to an ambitious program to build at least one small modular reactor in each province by mid-2030s. Mid-2030s. Committed. Well, the nuclear industry was screeching. They had to come out and do it, see? Whether it's true or not. But renewables are going to jack the entire electrical system in about 5 years, according to the International Energy Agency. There's going to be at least 4,800 gigawatts of new renewables online in the next 4 years. That's equal to all the nuclear power plants, all the fossil plants on the entire planet combined. So they're pushing now, before you wake up in the next couple of years and say, to hell with nuclear, why bother? So they're going to rob you now so you have no future, basically. Escalation and damage caused by a steady increase in severe weather due to climate change. Climate change is caused by radioactive fallout. Fukushima was the tipping point. 75 years of fallout, but Fukushima was the tipping point. Multiple reactors, multiple fuel pools detonating, common spent fuel pools detonating. That model is only 20 days, by the way. is permanent forever. It never goes away. Account for the urgency of decarbonization. So this is a propaganda from the 2015 Paris Accord, is the decarbonization. Decarbonization is extinction of you. It has also convinced many governments and utilities clean energy sources, among them wind and solar, will not provide enough additional power quickly enough to curb the climate crisis. Small modular reactors, even if you start right now, are 15 to 20, 25 years before you get a few of them built. To say that they're going to save the planet or climate change or anything else is insanity. But they're going to be using mixed oxide fuel. It's the last thing you want to be producing. Wind and solar will not provide enough additional power quickly enough to curb climate crisis damage. Well, you can't stop what Fukushima got done. But you can't stop the radioactive fallout. It already happened. It already killed all the species. As I showed you at the very beginning, it's an extinction event. I've done the research expeditions. There's no doubt about this. For Canada is more than a bit of a national pride estate. In its Canadian roadmap for small modular reactors, and I read part of it, released in 2018, Ottawa cited Canada's expert capabilities in many areas of nuclear. Canada at the center of global export market in small modular reactors. Canada will be at the center of small modular reactors, really. Really. That's so absurd and not true that they should be arrested for even saying it. Well, traditional nuclear plants probably belong in the energy mix. Small modular reactors don't. Small modular reactor designs likely wouldn't achieve widespread deployment until 2030. No, they won't be widespread. They'll be having at best a few test reactors built. By then, they would have been overtaken by improvements in the existing clean energy sources. The Union of Unconcerned Scientists, which is from the bowels of the Manhattan Project, a long-time proponent of nuclear power. No. They're pro-nuclear. They act like they're anti-nuclear, but we've covered them hundreds and hundreds of times. Canada is a superpower in small modular reactors export. It's because the nuclear industry in Canada has got the whole country destroyed and strangled to death at this stage. They got total control of the universities, total control of the medias, total control of the monetary and the government, and key positions of the government. And this is like 6 or 7 generations of the industry, of inbreeds, and the ones that are there now are the entitled lot. They want it all, they don't want to do nothing, and their parents done it, their parents were scumbags, and their parents were scumbags, and they're going to be scumbags just like them. If Canada was to aim for superpower status and clean energy, could do better than reap the enormous offshore wind turbine energy from Canada's world-leading 243,000 kilometers of coastline. That's naked, stripped because of Fukushima radioactive fallout. Wind and solar powers, whose costs are falling so quickly, no form of nuclear might ever be able to compete with them, are manifestively already proven. Small modular reactors, by contrast, are a crap technology. And given the urgency of the climate crisis, even a modest distraction by small modular reactors might be an extravagant we can't afford. Officials finish buried nuclear waste cleanup at Idaho. This story is absurd, by the way. This is absurdness. That site sits atop a giant aquifer in Idaho. A giant aquifer buried for decades in unlined pits. So every time it rained and snowstorms, it distributed that out. That's not there anymore, it's distributed. 97 acres landfill at an 890 square mile nuclear wasteland, 2,300 square kilometer death zone site that includes the Idaho National Laboratory. And how many times have we covered them again? I've lost track after about 1,000. They're incredibly evil. The radioactive waste management complex. Waste management. The radioactive waste dump complex. Official says the work was completed 18 months ahead of schedule. Have a nice day. Thanks for the bonus. The targeted radioactive waste included plutonium, uranium, and it was generated during nuclear weapons production, so it's loaded with curium, uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontium, and 1,000 other fission products. From nuclear production, weapons production work at Rocky Flats, shipped there. Rocky Flats, the FBI had to raid that place and close it. The waste from Rocky Flats was packaged in storage drums, in boxes. These are special types of boxes. These are not like cardboard boxes. Before being sent from 1954 to 1970, you can imagine how deadly that stuff is going to be, to the high desert sagebrush, eastern Idaho, where it was buried in unlined pits and trenches. 50 miles west of Idaho Falls. The landfill site sits above Lake Erie size aquifer, Eastern Snake River Plain aquifer. Sits above the Lake Erie size Eastern Snake River Plain aquifer. Lake Erie is a massive. So that aquifer is officially 100% polluted. That's 100% polluted. Now that landfill, or that aquifer, supplies farms, radioactive farm food, and the cities. Unbelievable. Idaho National Laboratory, killing you where you live. A 2020 U.S. Geological Survey reported radioactive chemical contaminations in the aquifers decreased or remained constant. How can it remain? Like, it's unlined pits. Every time it rains, it distributes it out. What's underneath it? Aquifers. Where does it distribute it to? The aquifer. What does the aquifer feed? The farms and the cities. It's unbelievable. This is an unbelievable story. How Russia could use less explosive nuclear charges carried around in backpacks. Nuclear weapons in backpacks. This was a professor David Welch, a professor of political sciences at Canadian University of Waterloo, figures. But Russia, now most professors in universities were these dysfunctional people that wouldn't leave the universities. Got a degree in this, got a degree in that. No friends, never had a girlfriend, never socialized. They're perfect, right? They know how to regurgitate the documentation from the book. Perfect. They get hired as professors. Have nuclear demolition charges that can be carried around in a backpack. Designed to do things like destroy bridges. And Western nations might struggle to detect the radiation. Professor Welch. One could also imagine a limited use of a more powerful tactical nuclear weapon, perhaps a few to destroy Ukraine's armor formations, fuel depots, or leadership bunkers, or to cut crucial supply lines from NATO countries. The larger the use, the more shocking it would be, the more pressure NATO countries would be under to respond. Well, the only way they can respond is the war, right? Professor Welch concluded, he said, I have a hard time imagining Russia using tactical nuclear weapons. So why did you say it for? On top of that, Russian generals would not want to irradiate the battlefield on which they wish to operate. So they wrote the article until you got to the very bottom of it where they start to make some sense. Everything else was just incredible fear-mongering. What's the point of having a professor if they're going to do stuff like that? Because that's their job, Dana. Oh, I should know that. Oh, he's a senior feller at Center for International Governance. International governance. This medal in every other country, basically. He's also founder of the Japanese Future Initiative. He's also founder. That's scary that he's doing stuff like that. Japanese, the most polluting place on the planet, exporting absurd amount of radioactive food to Canada immediately and non-stop. So people are constantly being poisoned. Wollongong City Council urged to continue its nuclear-free zone status. A suggestion last month that Port Kembia could be home to nuclear-powered submarines sparked protest. Monday's council meeting, a move will be made to reaffirm the city's status as a nuclear-free. Way to go, guys. Some Russian troops still in Chernobyl exclusion zone. They were saying they left it, right? On the last show. Turns out they're not actually left it. Activists urged Speaker in India to halt the construction of a new nuclear power site. Now, India arrested 10,000 protesters after Fukushima who were protesting a nuclear power plant. Let me see if I can find that story really quick. Do I actually do anything quick around here? I guess not. I thought it was right there, but it's not. Where did you go? Bingo. Their crime was protesting. So 9,000 people were booked for sedition in India. They were beaten up and arrested. Their crime participating in a peaceful protest against establishing a nuclear power plant. That's the same power plant that we're talking about. Look at that. And they still haven't been to trial a decade later. They can't get a job, can't use their bank account, they can't leave the country to go to school because they got to wait for charges of sedition. Sedition. Charged with sedition for peacefully protesting nuclear, and they came in and beat them up too on top of that. That's the same story, same nuclear power plant where an activist was foolish enough recently to suggest that they stop. I mean, bless his heart for doing it, but they already arrested 9,000 people for sedition for protest, and you really think they won't do it again? He petitioned the Assembly Speaker and requested him to stop the construction until the issue of disposing of spent nuclear fuel is addressed. Okay, so the central government is informed that India is developing technologies for separation, partitioning, and burning of waste, and so a deep geological repository is not required to be constructed. In other words, they're going to burn the nuclear waste in India, folks. let that sink in for a second. They're going to burn the nuclear waste. That's what they're talking about. Because if you're going to separate, if you have separation partitioning, then you still would need a deep geological repository. Or some kind of repository anyway. But if a deep geological repository is not required because you're burning of the waste, that should terrify everybody. They're so far out of control at this stage that there's nothing off. There's nothing that they won't do. We got a poll tonight, in case anybody's interested. Should people who claim nuclear power is carbon-free get a $100,000 fine? I think it's a great idea. Because the people who cause it carbon-free are the same people that are destroying everybody's future. So a deep geological repository is not required to be constructed because they're going to burn it, ain't it? Oh, well, that makes sense. India is a monster. What else is new? It's nuclear. Well, if I don't talk about it in these shows, nobody does. If I don't say, hey, wait a second, that's actually evil, nobody will on the entire planet. There's nobody else to do it. It's bizarre. China launched a huge cyber attack on Ukraine's military and nuclear infrastructure days before Russia invaded, according to Ukraine. Ukraine has said so much shit now, who knows anymore. If proven, attack could be seen as support for Russia war effort and lead to sanctions on China, not just Russia. Yeah. GDN, harness the potential of nuclear energy. I got to go listen to that. I haven't heard it. Oh, this is Bahrain. Over in Bahrain, you can actually get the death penalty for importing it. They called a guy an activist, entrepreneur, and environmentalist. Wanted nuclear in the company, in the country. Evil is very easy to find. Now you just got to look at the nuclear. Who's pro-nuclear? They're evil. They'll do anything to get their way, and that's how they get their way. Lie and steal and cheat, lie, steal and kill, and destroy the future of everybody, so they get a paycheck. Nuclear Skills showcased Industry Award Ceremony. Nuclear Industry Awards ceremony by the nuclear industry itself. Sponsored by the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority, who've never decommissioned a single thing in the United Kingdom. The event was organized on behalf of the nuclear industry and Cogent Skills. The Nuclear Decommissioning Authority group was heavily represented with 6 finalists from Sellafield, Magnox, and Energus. Really? Sellafield and Magnavox? So they got to give themselves an award because they got so much money thrown at them all the time. It just feel good, right? Feel good for being a scumbag award. Winners of the night include Megan Robertson from Sellafield, who was named Intermediate Apprentice of the Year. Or that kid who's willing to go into the danger zone because they're young and dumb. Sellafield and Gen 2, best employer. Sellafield is the best employer. CEO of Nuclear Waste Services opened the event on behalf of the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. We're celebrating the younger members of our sector tonight, the ones who don't know any better and we can trick into doing dangerous work because they're stupid. Across the NDA, businesses include Sellafield, Magnox, Donneray. Don't ever go there, folks. and the newly created Nuclear Waste Service. The Nuclear Waste Service, right, was created 4, 5, 6 months ago or something. They're in charge of getting rid of the waste. Showed up out of nowhere. They're in charge. They got the last say. We don't even know who it is yet. And the newly created Nuclear Scumbag Service. Our program is over 100 years to clean up the UK legacy sites. 100 years to clean up the sites. It's going to take a lot longer than that because they might never start. The Nuclear Decommissioning Authority ain't no hurry to start. Hosting the event, attended by representatives from across the nuclear scumbag industry, was Chris Hollis, sports and factual entertainment presenter and main presenter for BT Sports. BT Sports. One big happy family, are they? Municipal Waste announces a new album, Drop Grave Dive. Municipal Waste, that's the name of a band, folks. They're really good, but they got to appeal to kids, I suppose. Former students reunite through memories of State Street School. Several students recall a time when the basement of school was used to prepare for potential nuclear threats. Hinkley Point B staff and apprentices from EDF met the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Oh, wow, oh, wow, oh, wow, oh, wow. Do you really understand who Boris Johnson actually is? It's like saying you met a doorknob. It was a nice doorknob. It wasn't like all the other doorknobs, didn't it? Staff from Hinkley Point B and apprentices from EDF took a trip to number 10 last month. Really, just reporting on it now. March 21st, Prime Minister Johnson had a meeting at Downing Street with the main companies involved in the UK nuclear industry. And he also met a number of apprentices, aka lackeys, who worked at EDF, which is France, energy site, to understand more about the benefits of a career in genocide nuclear power. Oh my God, boy. There they got their picture taken outside of 10 Downing Street. They make big dollars too, right? During the day we got our photo taken outside the famous door. I also got a chance to briefly meet with the Prime Minister, who was really interested in what we do. And those of us who work in the industry really care about celebrating the genocide. It's given us all great, well-paying jobs for many years. Because they compartmentalized, right? And then zero carbon energy. Yeah, they can't write the story without saying that, see? It's illegal. Municipal Waste announces new album. Electrified Brain is out on July the 1st via Nuclear Blast. Nuclear Blast. That's the trash music, I think it is. It's a new, not new, but it's getting a lot of momentum the last couple of years. It's an inspirational songs for our fans to cause bodily harm to themselves, but in a loud and healthy way, of course. Yeah. We're not writing any love ballads to sell records. We're just doing what we always done since the band started. That's trying to write loud, fast, and ripping hardcore punk metal. You hope you walk away with bloody ears, blown speakers, pissed off parents, black eyes, and a healthy distrust of authority. Well, there you go. I like them a lot. Oh, Thermonuclear is one of their songs. Because you can't escape it, see? It's the nuclear industry has invaded all of our senses. Meet the XB-78, a Mach 3.1 bomber built for battle with Russia. It was built to bomb Russia. But it became obsolete right away because Russia has really fast missiles. Had one mission to wage a nuclear war against Russia. That's kind of frightening, isn't it? There it was, gone. French sub-deal cost Australia $5.5 billion. Australia's already screaming the blues. So that $5.5 billion could have built all kinds of renewable energy supplies all across Australia. That'll be the end of their energy problem right there. Look at that. No, they got to give it to the scumbag French. Not only that, they're going to sell armored vehicles to Ukraine. You know, fly them there on these carbon-killing machines. The Boeing C-17 Globemaster transport plane. Well, it's not like Australia's going to use the armored vehicles anyway. 3 uranium investments to purchase for income and profit from Russia's ruses. Think about that statement there. Think about what kind of degenerate you actually got to be to say that. Well, there you go. There's all of them right there, isn't it? Bloated military budgets makes the U.S. less secure. Biden proposed $813 billion Pentagon budget. What do they need that much money for? They don't see. They're out of control. Lobbyists. Do Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman, etc., rule the country via their lobbying muscle? Yeah. I read that at the beginning. And the Council of Government must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. Yeah. That's such an important. I'll put that on the big screen in case you want to get a screen capture of it later. Everybody should have a screen capture of that, preferably better, and then print it and have it on your wall. And everybody comes in, put it right where they're taking their boots off and tell them to read it. United States maintain 750 overseas military bases. It's actually around 900. And conducts counter-terrorism operations in at least 85 countries. Everybody's a terrorist. Tell you that. Shouldn't we ask, he wonders, whether it remains wise to keep handing the military what is effectively a blank check. Despite some 45 million Americans living in poverty, 35 million without health care, and veterans throughout the country sleeping on the streets, the only program the Republicans want to increase funding for is the military. Elon Musk, his name's come up in this one here. UK government talks to build hundreds of mini nuclear reactors across the United Kingdom. Last Energy, allegedly linked to Elon Musk. I want to beat the shit out of Elon Musk really bad, eh? So they're claiming they're going to build hundreds of these small nuclear reactors, with their first by 2025. They're going to have their first small reactor in 3 years. And that each reactor is only going to cost around $180 million. All the crazies are out. There's no end in sight. More nuclear power in the UK will create high-quality jobs. And so look at the picture. Farmland right by nuclear reactors. Boris Johnson recently announced he wants nuclear power to provide 25% of the country's electricity by 2050. Hopefully the next Prime Minister tears up that one, which is usually how this works anyway, right? Development of new generation nuclear power will ensure its rapid expansion. You can't build jack shit. You got to get France to do it. France can't build jack shit because they're always 5 times more expensive and takes an extra decade or more. Clean, reliable, safe energy sources. Clean, reliable, and safe. Again, right? If they don't lie, then they feel like they were cheated. To ensure energy independence because of Russia. So they just say whatever they want, whenever they want. If something's popular, oh, we got to do it because of that. Like the nuclear industry, social engineering, the current generation in charge of it are actually nuts. According to a spokesperson, in light of high global gas prices and Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, we should build nuclear power plants everywhere. Like you can't even have a conversation with these people. So critics claim time and cost involved with nuclear makes it unreliable, unviable. Take 10 to 15 years plus from planning to construction. We need to act now to prevent a climate emergency. Well, the radiation is what's causing the climate emergency. Oh, this is all social engineering. Renewables cost 1/5 of new nuclears to build. And you can have it up and running in 1 year or 2 years. Since 2009, costs for utility scale solar have dropped by 90% and wind by 70%. Nuclear increased by 30%. So the International Energy Agency says that globally, renewable electricity capacity is forecast to increase by over 60% from between 2020 and 2026, reaching more than 4,800 gigawatts, which is equal to 5,500 nuclear power plants. 5,500. It's equivalent to the current global power capacity, fossil fuels and nuclear combined by 2026. It's just going to get better after that, right? So long before you get to 2030, renewables is going to dominate, but it's not well known yet, see? But it will be in about 2 years. So what the nuclear industry understands that, and they're here to steal whatever they can before people wake up and realize what's really going on. And that is going to hold back everything. Not only that, it's going to guarantee the destruction of all the species. Because there's no hope with industry. It won't allow anything life. It leaps on everything that breathes and chokes it till it dies. That's what nuclear is. It's a predator that attacks everything alive. Yeah. Why not, right? I'm probably gonna take tomorrow night off. or I should say the night off, because it's 1:30 in the morning now. Yeah, it's 1:30. It's almost 3.5 hour show. And let this one percolate out there for an extra day. Because this is a good video. Oodles and oodles and oodles of good stuff in this video. We got a poll. We're going to close the poll down in a couple of minutes. Should people who claim nuclear power is carbon-free get a $100,000 fine? A resounding 91% to 77 votes. Awesome. That's awesome, folks. Thank you. I thought it was a good show tonight. It's technical, a lot of it, right? So we break it down. We only cut out the important stuff. And there's a lot of it. There's a lot of clicking tonight. This finger's pretty tired. He'll be okay. I kiss him, make him better. He'll be okay in the morning. Yeah, good finger. Not like all the other fingers that crapped out early. So if you think I'm wrong, go down and mark on all of these bags, 1-ton bags of high level of radiation, that Dana is wrong. Go down and mark on all those bags. Dana is wrong. Nuclear, good. Dana, wrong. Nuclear, good. Go down and mark on all those bags. Radiation is fear-mongering. What surprises me is the evidence that I bring to the conversation is absurd all the time. It's absurd how much evidence I actually bring. Now I can only go back so far. Let me see. We're going to end the vote here in a minute. We got to go over. First off, I always got to do this with each video. I got to go back into the video when I go live. I got to go back into the video when I go live. Should I put timestamps on this video after? Got to go back into the video and click allow embedding so people can embed it. I usually do it as soon as I go live because that button gets unchecked right away. And I'll just remind anybody, because we're struggling live, we're struggling trying to raise money. And if you scroll right down the bottom of my comments, there's only 2 ways to donate to me. Both of them are right there. You can donate directly to me through both of them. And at my website, let the page load up. Scroll under that picture, and you'll see a donate button right there. You can donate that way. That's how you donate directly to me. So you can now donate directly to me. Going to end the vote right here on 78. Awesome. 78 votes, 66 likes. Good night, everybody. Andrew B. Hi, Andrew B. PBS lover. Says, do I deliberately disable the chat replay for published videos? No. What happens is Google won't let the video replay the chat for 12 hours. It's 12 hours after the show ends. That video is no chat. I'll get no thumbs up, stuff like that. It won't show up on the front page unless you, let me see, I'll show you. So after the show, the only way to find the video is you got to click previous live streams. So after 12 hours, it will show up. But for 12 hours, the only way to find the video again is to click on past live streams. Then you'll find this video. But after 12 hours, it'll show up on the front page. Swanee D, if you're out there, I know you're having hellish times with it. Now, why would I hide the comment section for? Why would I care? I've been doing this for a decade. I don't care. It's Google, right? It'll show up after 12 hours. Dana Nasana, good night, Dana. Thank you again. Darlene, Obsolete Optics. Michael Allport, Darren, James Spencer, Port Angeles, Ted Richards. Good night, everybody. Tree Food, Victor, Jan Floor. I'll butcher your name. Sorry. Patrick. Good night, everybody. Just doing a quick shout out because why not? We've been going for 3.5 hours. Sean O. I'm sure lots of people gave up. It's a long show. It's a tough show. I never stopped since the last show. I'm going to take tomorrow night off. And I'll come back on Tuesday night. And I'm actually going to take tomorrow off. I'm not working. I'm not gathering up news. I'm taking tomorrow off. I got a lot of work to do and in the shed and equipment. I bought new hoses for the compressor and a bunch of other odds and ends on the weekend. And I got them plumbed in and hooked up. I can't even remember on top of my head right now because it's a 3.5 hour show. Richard. Good night, everybody. PBS lover, I already said good night to, I think. Yeah, I answered your question. Warren. Shane Clark. Hi, Shane. Stephen Young is out there somewhere. I was talking to Stephen Young yesterday for about a half an hour. Poor guy, man. It's a hard recovery. He's having a hard time. But he's still pushing hard. Bless his heart. Sandra Churchill. Hi, Sandra. So I'm just going to the older comments first, and then I'll get to the most recent ones. See, Shayla White was in there earlier. Shayla. I'm just scrolling. Now, I only got access to partial comments on the inside. So anybody that commented originally, I probably won't see their name if they didn't comment again. If I put my video up, say 8 or 9 hours before I go live, and you comment, 3 or 4 hours before the show goes live, those comments are usually gone. Google scrubs it. It's not me, it's Google that does that stuff. I'm just assuming I got everybody. I'm going to come back down to the most recent comments. Yeah, Stephen Young's name is there. Nuclear killed all the birds. He's been looking for birds recently. He can't find any down in Las Vegas. Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I just seen his comment, actually. Just a quick check. See if I got anybody I didn't quick shout out for. Looks like we done good. Darren James Spencer. You're welcome. Remind everybody again that We really do need new people to donate. Everything helps, folks. And the links are at the very bottom of my description. So we send out hugs for everybody. God bless everybody. Have a great night, great day tomorrow. And we'll see. I'm taking tomorrow night off, and I'm coming back on Tuesday, hopefully refreshed. I'm busted up. When I wake up in the morning now, I'm so stiff from work, and I don't know, I can barely move. I can't, after a few hours it's not too bad, but that's probably good for me. I'm happy. I'm really totally thrilled that I'm getting work done. Spring is coming. We got to get busy and get things accomplished. So nobody's going to do it if I don't do it. It's got to get done. I'm doing the best I can. I'm not a young person anymore. Life is really difficult to get shit done anymore. Plus, I have to run these shows. These are an unbelievable amount of work. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody on the next show. Have a great night, a great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody soon. God bless. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you can. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night. Yeah, thanks, Jade Freeman. God bless everybody. Have a great night. Take care, folks. We'll see everybody soon.